Pradeep Gupta and myself, my name is Raju Raman, will try and steer you through the morning session after lunch today. We have a lot on our plate, and rather than talking from us to you, it is the experts who are supposed to be heard by the young entrepreneurs or the future entrepreneurs to take some tips and so on. So that is the purpose of this. Bengal, past, present and future. Focus is on Bengal, as you can see on the board over here. So Pradeep and myself will try and speak as little as possible so that you can have the benefit of sharing your knowledge with all these young people, and they have the benefit of asking questions to you and profiting from your expertise and your experience. Pradeep.
Thank you, Mr. Raman, more popularly known as Rajuda in Calcutta. He's one of the best known language teachers in our city, the program officer of Victoria Memorial and associate of the Calcutta Debating Circle. Now that's where I come in. Calcutta Debating Circle was formed as a society to encourage public discourse exactly 10 years ago. And over the years, we've been holding programs which are essentially debates, panel discussions, other types of interactive sessions. And every year we choose a specific subject for a panel discussion. This year we decided that we would change the format and take a look at entrepreneurship, because we thought it was something that was agitating the minds of Indians all over the country and even beyond. And there is so much talk about what we can do, what we should do, what we are not doing. Every possible avenue of entrepreneurship was being explored by every group that one can imagine. It gives me great honor to request first Mr. Jerry Rao, ex-Citibank, ex-Emphasis, who set up this landmark company on low-cost housing. And he says he's not involved in the operations yet. He hardly needs an introduction to an Indian audience, and in fact, to very few audiences overseas as well.
Thank you so much for that very kind introduction. It is interesting that today in business schools around the world, the most popular courses are not finance, which was the case 20 years ago. And particularly after the Lehman crisis, finance is in the doghouse. The most popular courses are entrepreneurship. And of course, this begs the question is, can entrepreneurship be taught? The general view is that there's a lonely Thomas Alva Edison in a garage who sits and makes things, invents things, and subsequently goes on to become an entrepreneur. And he was more or less genetically endowed with it. It's not something that can be learned in a school or college. And I think there is validity to that point of view, but like all points of view, it's just a half-truth. It's not the whole truth. There are aspects of entrepreneurship which I think can be assimilated if not learned, can be understood if not entirely part of a pedagogical program. Let me give you a couple of broad stroke issues on entrepreneurship. Why is the US a country of successful entrepreneurs? It's not an accident. The people who left Europe in the 17th century and migrated to the US did not like inherited landed wealth. The idea of inherited landed wealth was immensely disliked, because that's the way the European aristocracy controlled Europe. The idea of creating wealth was, and that too, wealth through ideation, through execution rather than through inheritance. Pennsylvania was one of the first places in the world to introduce inheritance tax, death duties. They didn't like the idea of people inheriting a lot of wealth. The Quakers even now abhor it. And as you know, Pennsylvania was a Quaker colony. There's extensive discussion among the American founding fathers about intellectual property. It's amazing. As much as they talk about the Bill of Rights, they talk about intellectual property. Franklin, Jefferson, Madison, they all talk about that the need to create an atmosphere where intellectual property can be protected, and which would encourage people to create intellectual property and then derive wealth from it. Mind you, they still stole. For a long time, America had no copyright. They used to steal the works of Europeans quite casually. And so countries always support intellectual property when it suits them. Suddenly you'll find in the next 10 years, by the way, China supporting intellectual property in a big way once they have finished their stealing route. So that's simply, that's just a historical fact. But my point is the idea of creating wealth, of not inheriting wealth, and of doing that by individual effort is deeply embedded in the American tradition. And that is one reason why, if you read P.G. Wodehouse, you will know that there's a guy called Donaldson who's got a company called Donaldson's Dog Joy, which makes dog biscuits, and he becomes a multi-zillionaire. So, and of course, the English aristocracy look down on him. Lord Emsworth doesn't think much of a guy who's selling dog biscuits. But it's clear that Wodehouse knows a thing or two, that the aristocracy is in decline and the future belongs to the Donaldsons of the world. So do we have an environment that's conducive? Unfortunately, we don't. Even as I speak, I know of 10 companies, Indian companies, which have decided to incorporate in Singapore. We don't have an ecosystem, legal ecosystem, that is conducive to entrepreneurship. It's getting better. It was terrible 20, 30 years ago. Today, at least, it's better. At least people listen to us. At least we have venture capitalists, private equity people. We have stories, but it's very difficult. There are no standard. When I incorporated my company Emphasis in California, it took the lawyer like 48 hours because there's a standard template. In Silicon Valley, everybody uses that, and it's over. And in fact, in that template, he gave a lot of rights to my investors. I said, they are not asking for it. Why are you giving them? He said, don't be silly. Sooner or later, this will go into disequilibrium if you don't give it. So you might as well give it up front. I mean, it was a standard boilerplated thing. And the law firm that did the work actually took part of their fees in equity. Everything was all done. It was all done in no time. Now, we've not reached that. We don't have that ecosystem. And that's true of all of India. It's probably a tad worse in Bengal because the traditions of the socialist totalitarian regime that you people unfortunately had for so many years, I'm sure have still not fully gone away. So it's probably a tad worse. But it is bad in general. The second issue, broad, again, painting very broad, is culture. And you mentioned that. The issue of what should a young person do? What is it that makes people proud? When they say, and this lady sitting here, she proudly told me that her 22-year-old daughter has a business of her own. That's a new thing. 30, 40 years ago, she'd have said, she's married, she's pregnant, she's having her first baby. That was a thing for an Indian girl not to be married at 27, 28 was a tragedy. So it is changing, but still there is a search for security. It's less today. And I think we need to continue to focus on the fact there's nothing wrong with taking up a job, but that's not the only thing that one needs to do. There are other ways one can pursue passion, and pursue passion profitably. The important thing, though, I do want to say, which is that 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs are going to fail. So how a society, how an individual deals with failure, is the stigma of failure so bad that people get destroyed? That's something that we need to face up to. Even though in your heart of hearts you're passionate, you're convinced your business is going to do well and you're going to become the next Gates, your head has to tell you that 90% probability is that your business is going to fail. Can you live with that? Can your parents live with that? Can your friends live with that? Can everybody live with that? Not with a stigma, not that it is bad, but that's the way it is. That's the way life is. You know, we should learn from sports persons. People don't stop playing tennis if they don't become champion. You know, sports, they try very hard, but to get into the top 100 in the world is very difficult. So if you look at Indian tennis players, they have adopted a very interesting strategy. They don't play singles, they play doubles, and in the doubles they get pretty high up. Because the really great tennis players don't bother to play doubles, right? So they find a niche, which is a classic entrepreneurial way of approaching a problem and a constraint. Now, specifically Bengal, I'll just talk a couple of minutes. This idea that Bengalis are only eating ilish mach and singing Rabindra Sangeet and are not interested in business is bullshit. It's absolute nonsense. But it has a kind of horrifying, self-fulfilling fantasy about it, which I think has to be addressed head on as simply not true. The first, and another speaker is going to cover this in some greater detail, the first managing agency company, which is a very uniquely Indian institution, combining the British joint stock company with an Indian kind of trust structure, was floated in Calcutta. And you're talking about Edison's, you know, let's talk about Bengal Chemicals, Calcutta Chemicals. These were set up by chemists. So the idea that there is something either genetic or cultural which prevents this, please, you know, discard that. That is simply not the case. I do think, though, that entrepreneurship in general benefits from displacement. It was easier for me to become an entrepreneur in California than I think it would have been in India. As it turned out, I came back to India. It was a merger, this, that, and the other. But the displacement is helpful. So to the extent you're putting your team together, it's not a bad idea to have people who have been displaced, not people who are from the same neighborhood, who have lived there all their lives, but who've moved. Displacement does create a certain element of being able to deal with the unknown, being able to deal with challenges. But there is nothing genetic or cultural about this. We know that now for a fact, that you know, the entrepreneurs. Now you take two communities in Tamil Nadu, Goundars and Nadars. Goundars are traditionally a farming caste. Today, the entire India's largest garment export, which is the knitted hosiery of Tirupur, is run by Goundars. Every single bore well anywhere in India, by the way, today, if you have one, you're drilling one in your village or in your home, in your garden, it's going to be dug by a Goundar entrepreneur from Namakkal. They have taken a complete stranglehold of these industries, and these were farmers still 40, 50 years ago. So the idea that, you know, whole communities, whole groups of people cannot shift and cannot shift. And in fact, there's some interesting theoretical work emerging that some of this might actually be, instead of always looking down on caste as a bad thing, caste actually might be providing some social human capital. Which brings me to another point specifically to Bengal. I think you should look at Prabashis as part of your extended network, and therefore as giving you access to social human capital. Because networks are all important. You need networks in order to succeed. You must keep in touch with your school alumni, college alumni, every single network that you are in touch with. You don't know, as I say, many a shaft at random sent hits the target the archer never meant. So you don't know where you will get a lead for a business, where you will get an introduction which will help you raise capital, where you will get your first good employee. You know, the networks are important, and it's just not family networks, it should be extended beyond. And I think the Prabashi Bengali network can be a very, very powerful one. Invariably, one of your uncles is somewhere in Massachusetts, and one aunt is somewhere in Stockholm, and you need to take that as an asset. You need to not be shy of asking for help, of asking for introductions, of asking for contacts. When I built Emphasis, it was all about networks. I had a network of ex-city bankers. I have a network of IIM Ahmedabad alumni. Each of these came up. The two Bearings guys who invested in my company and who became board members were both IIM Ahmedabad alumni, many years my junior, but that was the connect. In fact, the way I got introduced to the law firm, Wilson Sonsini, in Silicon Valley, was through a guy I used to meet at the Indian temple in Malibu. I used to go to the Balaji temple every week, and there was this guy who used to come there, and we used to talk. And when I decided to start a company, I needed the top lawyer in Silicon Valley, which was Wilson Sonsini, and I knew he had done business with them. So I called him. So the temple network ended up being, I never knew the guy otherwise, but except that both of us used to go to the temple and pray every Saturday in Malibu. So do not underestimate the importance of networks, and I think this can actually be a big plus. There is not a single, Morgan Stanley, Goldman, whatever, where there isn't a famous Prabashi sitting there. And there is some way you can reach out. To say that you can't reach out means then you're not being an entrepreneur. You have to figure a way to reach out. And you have to figure a way to leverage that network. When you decide on your marketing strategies, keep in mind that yes, many times you'll start a local business because that makes sense, and that's where you can get focus and you can get quick results. But you do want to always not think of it only as local, but as something that can grow national, grow global, and standards will always be world class. This business that this is good enough for India, if it's a little dirty, that's okay. If the product's a little shoddy, that's okay by Indian standards. Don't go for that. You'll never scale. You'll be successful, you'll get some positive cash flow in 2 years, but then all your life you'll remain in that mediocre segment. You'll never. So you got to go for world-class standards, irrespective of where you are. It's difficult. Doing anything world-class in India is difficult. Our external state provided infrastructure is pathetic. So many things about our lives are pathetic, so it's tough. But we can't therefore give up on it. You just have to keep that going. If you are 3 or 4 people starting the business, I think you need to get some rules, some shares, particularly if one decides after 12 months to leave, etc., exit policies agreed upon. Don't postpone it saying we are friends, we'll deal with it, or we'll never quarrel. They say good fences make good neighbors, and that is true even with your friends with whom you're starting this company. please get some rules. It doesn't have to be a legal document, but it's some rules. Listen, we are starting this company. We are 4 of us. We have one rule. We won't give jobs to our spouses. Whatever. Get those minimum rules in there. If one of us wants to go after 12 months, then this is what we will do. We'll get those things, because this idea that everybody is going to have live happily ever after does not work. And many times, many fledgling businesses fail because of lack of these elementary rules among partners. I'm going to stop there because you have many other speakers who will give you insights. But I do want to leave you with one particular thought. Especially in our country, this is important. Our government is a failed government at every level, be it city, be it state, be it center. They can't negotiate a defense contract in less than 15 years. Just think about it. Just think about the level of efficiency that we have. So if this country is going to see an elimination of poverty, if it is going to see that we are at least not so pathetically dirty wherever we go and dusty, if we are going to get somewhere in your lifetimes, I'm not even sure it will happen in my lifetime, but in your lifetimes, it's only private individual initiative and entrepreneurship that's going to make it happen. So it's not just about pursuing your passion and making money, which are very important. I think there is also an underlying seed of a social cause that you represent, and in that, particularly in that context, I wish you lots of luck. Thank you.
That was really a captivating speech that we heard. Lots of funny stuff. The rules part, sir, I like the best, because one of the main roles when I was not working for myself was to conduct the exit interviews at my workplace. But I really would like you to spend a few minutes more. How do you build a team? Because nobody knows about building a team more than you. I think our young minds here would really appreciate that one.
Hello. The only reason talented people, energized people will join a team is if there is a sense of fairness. If you go back and look at Narayan Murthy, one of the things he did was he became very rich, but he also made sure he shared his wealth with a lot of people. So there was a sense of fairness. And in fact, I would even make the case that a couple of them didn't deserve as much as they made based on their contributions, but that didn't hold him back. He said the sense of fairness, if they see that you're a fair person, you will attract talent. And fairness is a reputation that is established over time. If in college you have been, cheating in your exams and so on, and that reputation spreads, it's unlikely that people are going to join you when you start a company. Though it's just not possible. People, they know this guy's a crook, he's going to, give me a job and then later somehow take my options away and somehow keep all the money himself or not reimburse my expenses or whatever, millions of ways that you can fix an employee. You will do that, therefore you won't get it. So it pays, therefore, to have a reputation which is, I'm not saying saintly, but a reputation of fairness and ethics and decency. To my mind, that is more important than a reputation for intelligence, although intelligence is important, but it is not the single biggest thing in building a team. Now, building cross-cultural teams, and today, of course, gender-balanced teams, is much more difficult. It's much more difficult because we have a problem of stereotyping people, and we just have to get over it. My partner, who I started my company with, was a Dutch guy. Now, it is important that in my mind, he's Jeroen. That is, Dutch is incidental. And similarly in his mind. As it is, it turns out I'm a great lover of Holland, and he's a great lover of India, but that's almost irrelevant. But I didn't have certain technical skills that he had, and he didn't have certain managerial skills that I had. And we both acknowledged that up front. It was nothing to do with the stereotyping of us by our nationality, but by our skill base, by our experience base. That is key in building a team, is you need to have all the skills that are required. You can't have just a passionate design person and then making great designs if the damn thing doesn't sell. And if you don't build a team, then you'll always be small. You can't be big, which is not a bad strategy, by the way. Many people do very well being small. There are certain businesses, take art galleries for instance. It's a niche business, but probably it's not a good idea to become too big, because then your quality goes down and things happen. So that's again a choice you guys have to make. I'm going to build for scale, or am I happy doing a niche business? There's nothing wrong with doing a niche business. There is absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, take MTR. I don't know how many of you know. MTR makes the best masala dosas in the world. It's in Bangalore. It's a restaurant. And the old man who started it kept it as a single outlet. In his will, he wrote, I don't want a second outlet. Now, after he died, of course, his sons were seduced by private equity and all these, and they sold portion of the company, and they've branched out here and there. But the fact of the matter is, he, for 50, 60 years, ran an outstanding place, very profitable, as a single, and it's not necessarily a bad business strategy, but it's not one for scale. If you want to grow, as they say, you have to be a Samsung, you can't be a Gucci. Those are choices you have to make.
Right. Actually, that was wonderful what you said now about this MTR. Their products have spread even to Calcutta now. You can get them in some of the, you get them here, certainly. I'm sure some young people have some questions too.
Sir, I'm Deepak Patwari. Now the government has come out with this scheme of, startup schemes and all for the young entrepreneurs. So what's your view on this? In fact, how it's going to be helpful to the young entrepreneurs instead of creating jobs instead of seeking jobs?
Actually, I've written about this, so if you want to Google, you can check. The idea that a committee of bureaucrats in Delhi can help entrepreneurs is such a joke. I mean, it's not even comical, it's absurd. It's such a waste of time to even think about it. A couple of people might, but it's not a sustainable thing for you to build any business plans around. It's only a private ecosystem. And we do have now. We have PE firms, we have VC firms in India. They're pretty big all over the country. That's the one that you have to look at. The government ecosystem is I would not waste my time.
So my name is Karan. You've talked about teaching entrepreneurship in schools, but if you look at it, the basic thing that's ingrained in entrepreneurship is the risk factor. Now, we as Indians are inherently risk averse. So how do you actually teach entrepreneurship how do you teach taking risk, the ability to take risk among students?
It's a very good question. What do they teach? If you take a look at an entrepreneurship program in a good business school, Wharton or Chicago or Stanford or Ahmedabad for that matter, they are teaching you exactly the areas where you can use theory, techniques, systems to understand risk, to mitigate risk, to manage risk. How do you negotiate with a private equity investor so that your interests and your risks are protected and his also? How do you, if your company does well, how much of the money do you take off the table? Or you are going to keep all your wealth in the company itself? Are you going to take a little bit and put it somewhere else? These are key questions that actually address the heart of the risk issue. And there are both theoretical and practical cases, models to help you in this. The question of marketing. The whole issue today, particularly with the digital world, what works and what doesn't work for a startup. You know, what is a higher probability that you'll go viral if you do this and don't do that? These are things that, again, and many people today in the e-world, I'm noticing, it's a big question, should I put my product on Amazon or not? Your margins go to hell if you put it on there. But your sales go up, and if you're in the business of raising money from a PE fellow based on your sales, then maybe you go on Amazon. But if you're a more longer term player and you want decent gross margins, you probably don't. You have to build up your own website and your own sales, which is a harder task. So these are things that you need to acquire skills and you need to acquire theory to be able to address this. So that's what they teach. It's not perfect. We know that the greatest entrepreneurs of the 20th century in America were both college dropouts. So the idea that colleges teach or business schools teach is a very limited idea, but it has its uses. That's all I can say.
I have a question for you from what you said also, because you mentioned at one point of time that displacement actually helps entrepreneurship. Yeah. Now we are talking about Bengal here as a focus, and do you think that is the reason why people who by choice decided to get displaced from Rajasthan and other parts of India to Bengal made it well in entrepreneurship here?
Yeah, look, this goes back 150 years to Max Weber and so on. This idea that displacement leads to either there is a self-selection. In other words, the people who stayed back in Marwar were the non-entrepreneurial. By self-selection, the entrepreneurial people came. That's one explanation. Or the displacement itself creates something there. Clearly, the Irish in Boston or Chicago or New York are much richer than the Irish who stayed back in County Wexmore or whatever. Now, how much of that is environmental, historical, how much is self-selection? We don't know. But displacement is always a good thing, is my point. In general, it seems like a positive thing, not a negative thing. This idea of Kabuliwala singing about his homeland and all is bullshit. The guy came here and made a living here, and I find that senseless nostalgia. We have to move forward, and everybody in one sense is displaced. If you read Joseph's book, we are all displaced. Yeah. We are all descendant from one African lady who lived, 200,000 years ago. One lady. We're all her descendants.
So thank you very much for the time being, and let's please give him a hand for the wonderful inputs. And Jerry Saab did mention about networking and Provashis. Look at your Provashis. That's exactly what we are going to do right now, and that's why we invite Professor Basu to kindly come up. Professor Prashenjit K. Basu, who lives and works in Singapore, and he has been analyzing Asia's economies for decades now and providing useful inputs to many organizations. And he is an author of several books, of course, and has been a very, very efficient commentator on BBC, CNBC, and several other channels too. And he is at present also the adjunct professor of economics and global affairs at the SP Jain School of Global Management in Singapore and Dubai. So Professor Basu, may we invite you as a Provashi Bengali to come and tell us, give us some tips as to how to go about entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much to the Calcutta Debating Circle. I'll talk a little bit about the past. I'll start with the past, talk a little bit about the present, and then go on to the future of entrepreneurship in Bengal and Kolkata. Bengal probably produced India's first truly great entrepreneur, and I'll talk about him. Unfortunately, his descendants are artists, writers, and other things apart from entrepreneurs. But he was a remarkable man. He was called Prince Dwarkanath Thakur. And I'll talk a little bit about him. Hopefully, his story will inspire some of us. But let me just start by talking about what entrepreneurship is. It basically, an entrepreneur takes on the risk of combining the factors of production. I'm speaking now as an economist. Labor, land, and especially capital with technology to produce something new. One of the great entrepreneurs and innovators, inventors, who Mr. Jerry Rao talked quite a bit about, Thomas Alva Edison, said genius is 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. I think he was being rather modest. I'd say a lot of it was inspiration in his case. But there's the other side of the story, which is what Woody Allen says about genius and success. Woody Allen's definition of success, he says 90% of success is simply turning up. I think some of us who are challenged by time and punctuality, we have a little bit of a problem with that, I think, in parts of India. Probably recognize the importance of Woody Allen's idea. Anyway, so innovation plays a really important part. The spark of an idea plays the biggest part in innovation and entrepreneurship. We have the examples of Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, all started by individuals, often with just an idea that seemed rather small, that eventually became dramatic. You know, of course, about the Microsoft example. Two young men, Bill Gates and Richard Allen, got this thing going, and they had a little bit of luck along the way, but the idea turned out to be quite brilliant, and they developed a monopoly in operating systems that dominated the computer market for about 2 decades. And Apple, most of us have at least an iPhone or a MacBook, Facebook and Twitter. So innovation is often a crucial aspect of entrepreneurship. We think of creative destruction as being an innate aspect of capitalism and one that helps to periodically renew economies and societies. This is the Schumpeterian idea. We had in India, of course, 44 years of what we called socialism, Nehruvian socialism, that ossified society and stood in the way of any form of creative destruction. Since 1991, we've had an element at least of creative destruction. We've had lots of new sectors that have emerged as a result of that. And so innovation, disruptive technologies are beginning to play an important role in driving entrepreneurship in India today. But I think it's important to recognize that in developing economies, what we sometimes call emerging economies, emulation, copying what developed countries have done successfully, can often be a great basis for entrepreneurship. So we have Flipkart as an excellent example in India now of a successful case of an Indian company that has basically emulated Amazon and created a competitor that is taking on Amazon within India. In China, of course, the entire space, the internet space, is dominated by Chinese companies, Baidu, etc., that operate in a space that was protected from the entry of the likes of Facebook. They used various other terms to describe what they were doing, freedom of speech, and they wanted to restrict freedom of speech or whatever it was. But you had basically a heavily protected domestic market in which rivals of Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, they have WeChat. WeChat has more subscribers than WhatsApp, have emerged. So in emerging economies, innovation is not always the way. Of course, Mr. Jerry Rao is an example of an innovator, but that's not the only way to be an entrepreneur. In fact, in this city, the remaining entrepreneurship that survived the communist depredations of 34 years, I'd argue more than 34 years, 40 years now, we still are a semi-communist state. The depredations of that 4-decade-long period were the people who survived were the trading community, and we mustn't underplay the importance of trading. After all, through most of history, India was the greatest trading nation on earth. We don't, now it's kind of forgotten, but through most of human history, India was the world's largest economy. Between the recorded history that begins around the time of Christ's birth until 1700, India was clearly the world's largest economy. Until 1820, in fact. 1820, China finally overtook India as the world's largest economy. And as a result, we were a tremendous trading nation throughout history. And our traders took our culture to Southeast Asia, West Asia, and so the king of Thailand is called Ram X. The current king of Thailand, his name is Rama the 10th. You go to Phnom Penh, the royal palace is full of the Ramayana, and Borobudur and all that. Now, all that was taken to these parts by Indian traders. In fact, Indian traders, Gujarati traders, took Islam to Indonesia as well. So both Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam were carried to Indonesia by Indians. So so we mustn't underplay or underestimate the importance of trade. The community that survived the communist depredations was, of course, the trader communities, the Gujaratis and Marwaris, and thank goodness for them. Of course, the greatest of the Marwaris probably is Lakshmi Narayan Mittal, or Lakshmi Niwas Mittal, sorry. L.N. Mittal, the world's greatest steel producer, a product of St. Xavier's College. He has never put a single dollar into India yet. He's just about to, with the purchase of SR Steel. But he was driven out of Kolkata early on. He ended up in Indonesia, where Suharto's era, you had Suharto era Indonesia, where had a more conducive environment. He purchased assets around the world, Germany, Mexico, Trinidad, and of course eventually Arcelor, the greatest steel company at the time in the world, and then he created ArcelorMittal, the biggest producer of steel by far in the world. Now, he started here. So the Calcutta diaspora, the Bengal diaspora is, I think, an opportunity. So if you think of Indian companies, Infosys, the classic example, a pure product of the liberalization of 1991. It was a tiny little company, but it had an innovative idea. The idea that you could arbitrage the cost of labor in the service sector in India and create a business around that. That was the original idea. And of course, that idea had been originated by TCS long before Infosys came up. They had been plodding along, frankly speaking, for 20 years already. Infosys shook that up. You had Wipro and others emerge as well. Cipla, an interesting company. During the Indira Gandhi era of socialism, Cipla came up with the idea that India did not need, India should just focus on product patents and not process patents. And so they created different processes to make medicines. And until the Uruguay Round trade deal of 1994, the Indian pharmaceutical manufacturing sector, we think that India did not have any manufacturing of world standards, but we did in medicines, pharmaceuticals. Even in the closed economy era, India was producing world-class medicines, but of course by circumventing the patent system. Eventually, of course, Cipla did a great service to the world by producing the cheapest HIV drug that has probably helped to contain HIV. So that's another. Then I have an example that many of you probably know about. Naukri.com was started by the husband of my classmate from St. Stephen's College, Sanjeev Bikchandani. He was 2 or 3 years my senior at college, but his wife was my classmate. And he used to sell Horlicks. And he decided that selling Horlicks is not going to be what he wants to do. So he became an entrepreneur, started Naukri.com, lived off nothing for about 10 years, but luckily his wife provided for him during those 10 years. So he had that good fortune of a working wife doing a Naukri while he created Naukri.com and then Shadi.com as well. So to enable others to repeat his example by getting married on Shadi.com. So those are some examples of the Indian route to entrepreneurship in recent years. Mahindra now you see, Mahindra's inherited, Anand Mahindra inherited a tractor business that had a fairly dominant position in India, but he took some remarkably innovative steps. He, of course, partnered with Kotak to create Kotak Mahindra Bank, and then he also he purchased SsangYong Motors. Now, if you think about SsangYong Motors, it had been previously owned by Shanghai Automotive Industrial Corporation of China. It had been owned by a few others, and they had all failed to really make much of it. Anand Mahindra bought SsangYong Motors, and he has turned it around. It is now a successful business in Korea. He's reverse engineered some of the technology from SsangYong to create his own SUVs in India that are doing very well. And the tractors are now, there is a whole industry of farmers in the U.S. who love Mahindra tractors. They're not called Mahindra in the U.S. They have some other brand. But there are several websites where Mahindra tractors, the eulogies, or great praise is handed out to these tractors. Anyway, so I'd say entrepreneurship in emerging economies involves also emulating developed world institutions and business concepts, bringing them home. I think we'll hear from Dr. Ghosh, who has done some of this as well. So business concepts that have worked elsewhere can be the basis for entrepreneurship in underdeveloped or emerging economies where there are lots of niches that can be filled. Perhaps the most remarkable example is Reliance in India. Dhirubhai Ambani basically decided quite early in life that he wanted to be the John D. Rockefeller of India. And he basically replicated the Rockefeller model, although he did something different. He started with textile exports, and then integrated backwards slowly all the way towards creating a monopoly in petrochemicals and petroleum refining. And I'd say he's probably gone even beyond John D. Rockefeller in his lifetime. And his son, of course, is doing something slightly more innovative. Jio has destroyed his brother and destroyed various other telecom companies, but has created done a national service of sort by providing for really the cheapest telephone calls anywhere in the world are in India. So $25 billion to create a national service. It's an interesting, different approach. Now, if you think about the Internet of Things, apps, things like smart cities and various smart apps and so on, they create a unique opportunity for emerging markets to leapfrog technology with innovative unicorns that are emerging. Mr. Rao pointed out that we don't have enough of an ecosystem, but I think a sufficient amount of an ecosystem exists in venture capital, private equity, and so on, with lots of people out of California, Singapore, Hong Kong, etc., looking to India to provide the next set of unicorns. So I think those opportunities exist, and there'll be lots of potential to create disruptive technologies and partake of them to create new companies. And of course, we mustn't forget that the communities of those who think that Artha is their dharma, Artha is their dharma, the Marwaris, the Baniyas, the Gujaratis, the traders, the Chettiars in the south, the Khatris in Punjab, Boris, Muslim Boris in Gujarat. The tradition of asceticism, unfortunately, plus the Marxism of Nehru, caused enterprise to be denigrated in India for too long, for the first 44 years, and some of that has entered our mindsets and has survived for even longer. But if we start decluttering our minds and reapproaching our history, understanding that there was a long history of entrepreneurship and trading in our DNA that existed before the Marxism of Nehru, then I think we can begin to think again and rebuild. We mustn't downplay the unique advantage possessed by business inheritors. They have capital to get a start. It's well known in Marwari communities that you can either choose, when you become an adult, you can either choose to inherit part of your family inheritance, or you can take a pool of capital and build a business on your own. So the inheritors therefore have a tremendous opportunity to do something great with that. Now, let me talk about the Prince Dwarkanath. He was a remarkable risk taker. He inherited a very small jomidari. He was a small, if you think about the Pathuria Ghat Tagores, the other part of the family, they're relatively small. They have a rather dilapidated old mansion. And the other side of the family, in fact, they were the wealthier part. And the Jorashanko family that he created was, had a small jomidari in East Bengal. He converted this into, but he realized that he had a lot of land. He could convert that into commercial industrial zones. So long before Deng Xiaoping thought of a special economic zone, Prince Dwarkanath came up with the idea of having economic commercial industrial zones on the land that he possessed. And he grew indigo, he mined coal, he manufactured silk and sugar. By the late 1830s, he owned the largest bank in British India. It was called Union Bank, different from the Union Bank of India today. He had the world's largest shipping line. The first tea estates and collieries in Bengal were started not by Britishers but by Prince Dwarkanath Tagore. The company was called Carr, Tagore and Company. Carr was almost a silent partner. He just lent his name. It was Tagore all the way. And there's an interesting story. Most people don't realize this, but the first Opium War was declared by Britain on China after a man called Lancelot Dent, who was the second largest Hong in Canton. The largest Hong was a man called William Jardine of Jardine Matheson. So William Jardine went to Palmerston, the Prime Minister of the UK, and said, Lancelot Dent, the second biggest Hong in Canton, has been, Canton is now called Guangzhou, by the way, has been arrested by the Chinese. We need to go to war. Lancelot Dent was the agent of Carr, Tagore and Company. So the first Opium War was declared on behalf of Carr, Tagore and Company, although it is rather not quite known. So when he visited England, he was Queen Victoria's guest, not only at Buckingham Palace. He told stories about having the Prince of Wales on his lap, etc. Then he was also Queen Victoria's guest at Royal Ascot. And there is a rumor, I cannot confirm or deny, there is a rumor that Queen Victoria even bore him a child. But that I cannot confirm. It's a rumor, after all. he may have been the first fake news. He died at 51 at St. George's Hotel in London, which still exists. It's now called the Brown Hotel in Mayfair. And it is said that Prince Albert may have poisoned him. Anyway, that is also a rumor. But you know, when he was literally the world's richest man, and hence was treated by both Queen Victoria and the Pope as in a manner that befits the world's richest man. Sadly, his son became a Maharishi. He complained a lot about the debts that he inherited from his father, and of course failed to build on the asset. You know, in any balance sheet you have liabilities, but you also have assets. Unfortunately, he only focused on the liabilities and found them too much of a burden. But anyway, that the business basically vanished within about 10 or 15 years of his death. But we have Rabindranath, Avanindranath, and Sharmila as his descendants. So we can at least celebrate them. Now, what happened to Calcutta? Well, entrepreneurship didn't end even among Bengalis with Prince Dwarkanath. Among others, there were Sir Rajan and Sir Biren Mukherjee. Sir Rajan Mukherjee started a company called Martin and Company. Again, the Martin was a relatively silent partner. It was basically Sir Rajan's company. They built the Victoria Memorial. They built, so it was a construction company. See, in British India, Indians were only allowed to be civil engineers. So if you're a civil engineer, you're great. The great civil engineer will be building things. And so the Victoria Memorial was built by Martin and Company. Later, Martin Byrne was his company. It built most of the iconic buildings that still exist in Kolkata, like the Standard Chartered building, the MetLife building, the life insurance building, etc. Were all built by that company. His son, Sir Biren, took it much further. He created the Indian Iron and Steel Company in Burnpur. And the very first loan that the World Bank ever gave to a private sector company was to ISCO, Sir Biren's company, in the 1950s. It was the first ever loan given by the World Bank to a private company anywhere in the world. And it was doing remarkably well until the late 1950s. And then, of course, you had Naxalism emerge among the youth of Bengal. Sadly, the communist parties of many countries in the world were founded by Bengalis. The Communist Party of Mexico was founded by a man called Narendranath Bhattacharjee, otherwise known as M.N. Roy. And Narendranath Bhattacharjee actually was Bagha Jatin's right-hand man, and Bagha Jatin certainly was not a communist. Bagha Jatin was a Bagha. He was a true tiger nationalist. And this is the land of Swamiji, Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, Bagha Jatin, Netaji Subhash. And yet this land of the ultimate nationalists became a land of communists somehow by the late 1930s. The Communist Party of Burma was established by a man called H.N. Ghoshal. Pramod Dasgupta was a member of Anushilon and Jugantar. So before 1945, he was a proper Indian nationalist who was committed to the rebuilding of India, Bharat. And yet, he became a communist. But I think Pramod Dasgupta, even towards the end of his life, he remained somewhat a nationalist. He did not, yeah, so anyway. Okay, so now,
We'll have to
sorry.
shift gears a
I'm
little
going,
bit now.
okay, speed up now. McKinsey did a study of urbanization about 10 years ago. It found that, basically, one of the interesting things about that, he looked at urbanization in the emerging markets, and they looked at cities with populations of, I think, anything more than 5 million as being an urban agglomeration. And they found that of all the cities, they all host some billion-dollar companies, at least one. The only two that did not at that time, 10 years ago, were Kolkata and Dhaka, the two Bengali cities. It was most disturbing to find. Somehow ITC was missing. I don't know why. Maybe ITC in that year had gone below $1 billion. But anyway, today Dhaka has many billion-dollar companies. Calcutta basically is still down to just ITC. So, and maybe now, I don't know if Stray Enterprises is listed. Not yet listed? Yeah. It is a Kolkata-based company. So now there are two. I can say maybe at least two. And perhaps when Haldia Petrochemicals gets listed. So we have the beginnings of some. We have also the great restaurant entrepreneur, another Chatterjee, Calcutta and mainland China, all over India. So you're beginning to see some. And then there are those who will be represented today. So there are some. But a century ago, Shanghai and Calcutta were the greatest Asian cities. Both declined dramatically in the 1950 to 2000 period. Shanghai is well and truly back today. Calcutta is still very much in the doldrums. All you need to do is see the size of Calcutta airport and how many international flights come here and compare them to how many flights land in Bangalore, Hyderabad, or even now, well, not yet Pune. Pune is a small place, but the dynamism of those three cities has left Kolkata far behind. So we need to figure out why. I think first of all, if you are going to revive Calcutta, we need a more conducive environment, including an educational system that emphasizes business more and agitation less. We've been agitating too long. I think we should have stopped agitating in 1947. But Michel became the most popular thing that, there's a Badol Sarkar play called Michel as well. So we have to stop the Michels. We mustn't underplay the importance of trading, of course. Now, in 1991, Bangalore took off. And yet Calcutta had many of the ingredients to succeed. It had an ecosystem. It had IIT. IIT Kharagpur was the first IIT. IIM Calcutta was the first IIM. Only by a few months, but IIM Ahmedabad came a few months later. There was, Presidency College used to be a great college. I have to say it used to. My uncle, when I went to study at St. Stephen's, he said, "Tui kano eschish? Okhane presidency ato bhalo college. Tui chhere ekhane eschish kano?" ওখানে তো স্ট্রাইক প্রত্যেক বছর স্ট্রাইক হয় পরীক্ষা হয় না the exams were not held in time those days so they used to be held 1 or 2 years later so now so that is one so the education aspect now we have a lot of educational entrepreneurs here one of whom will be represented later but there's a vital need to revive the education system second I think there's a vital need to revive the city as a financial center. And in particular to midwife India's Look East initiative. We've had the Look East initiative since about 1993. P.V. Narasimha Rao, we owe a lot to Narasimha Rao as a nation. But among others, we owe him the idea of looking east. The ideal place to midwife India's Look East policy is Calcutta. There used to be historic ties to Rangoon. Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay was born in Rangoon, by the way, and Rangoon was a Bengali majority city until 1939, at least. And when Netaji's INA headquarters was based in Rangoon, it was 3 times the size of the Burma Independence Army headquarters, because the city was still an Indian majority city. Yet all Indians were expelled from Burma in 1962. So those connections are historic. The buildings in Rangoon look a lot like Calcutta, but that's all. Now we need to revive links, build that link. Bangkok, Dhaka, KL, Hanoi, Thimphu, and Kathmandu should be looking to Calcutta to list their companies. But the Calcutta Stock Exchange, which used to be one of the oldest in this country and used to be really vibrant until I'd say 30 years ago, is today almost dead. We have, hopefully, Calcutta Stock Exchange can be revived. And I would suggest that the way to revive, and the idea of the Calcutta Stock Exchange should be to be the Chicago of India. New York has the NYSE, but in Chicago you have the Commodity Futures Exchange, you have FX futures and options. Everything in India is based in Bombay. Bombay is, Mumbai has many advantages. It has, of course, the big advantage of being the place where everything has agglomerated. But we need to start now. If Singapore can have futures and options written on Indian stocks, why can't we do the same in Calcutta for Malaysian stocks, for Thai stocks? So create an ecosystem, including an educational ecosystem, that will enable Calcutta to be the base for so-called South and Southeast Asia. But of course, in order to do that, finance in this city needs to rebuild itself. Dhaka has a much more vibrant stock exchange than Kolkata at the moment. So there's a second Bengali city that is in fact outpacing us in many things, not only in manufacturing, but also in finance. If Bangladesh can be a manufacturing hub, Bangladesh is the second biggest garment exporter in the world, why not West Bengal? Labor attitudes, of course, still need a sea change in this state, and hopefully the next couple of general and state elections will begin to help to change that. Anyway, now young people are the hope. So I'll make that very clear. We need a more market-oriented government in this state. So young people are still the hope. And so from whether it is Narendrapur, Narendrapur has produced this man called Bibek Debroy. Not only is he the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors to the Prime Minister, he has translated the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. He's now translating the Puranas. A remarkably prolific fellow. So Narendrapur is the sort of school that is still, I think, producing great minds. We have Kharagpur and Joka, IMC and IIT Kharagpur. Darjeeling used to be a great education center that still, my old school, St. Paul, still attracts more Bangladeshis than Indians. So there are lots of good Bangladeshi connections there. Well, actually, I'm exaggerating, lots of Indians too. But the cream of Bangladesh ends up there, Nepal. In my time, we used to have Thais and Malaysians. So, and I think there still are some Thais and Malaysians in Darjeeling. So, the links exist, the networks to enable the creation of a look east Calcutta, that becomes a financial center. I mean, of course, this is a pipe dream at the moment. I mean, I'm putting forward an idea that is really a pipe dream, but that has the ingredients to succeed. And of course, other ways we can think of, we can build deeper connects between culture, music, art, and business. I mean, that's an obvious one. We have lots of culture, music, and art in this city. But if you don't have an economy, even the quality of the culture, music, and art will decline. I mean, sadly, Bengali movies, 90% of them are unwatchable, the simple fact. So also we need to deepen the services sector. So obviously the medical sector, the education sector. Medical is clearly one area where Calcutta has not lost its nous. And, but we're not the only ones. I mean, we're not the dominant. I don't think Calcutta can say we are the dominant place for medical tourism, but we're still there. We're a competitive place for medical tourism and for medicine as a whole. We need to attract many more of the likes of IBM. Now, if you think about PwC selling, or was it selling or buying the IBM business? Was it buying or selling? Sold to IBM. So IBM now has a significant presence in Calcutta. Probably its biggest operations in India are still in Calcutta. Cognizant has substantial operations here. One day on a flight here, I found that British Airways back office is done entirely in Kolkata. So the information technology sector is beginning to emerge as a place of some importance. We obviously need to focus on the great Calcutta and Bengali diaspora. Ellen Mittal, of course, is the greatest Calcuttan alive, perhaps. Rajat Gupta, not so great now anymore, but also a man who rose to the top and came from this city. And of course, there are lots of Bengali entrepreneurs and professionals in Silicon Valley who could be attracted back. So I think it is possible, therefore, to come up with a strategy for the revival of enterprise and capitalism in this city. And I think this, to some degree, I've just chalked out a few ideas for how that can happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Basu. Now we are inviting Mr. Rupen Roy. Rupen Roy, of course, has been the country leader and managing director of Deloitte Consultancy in India till 31st July 2015. He's a founder of Sumantrana, an advisory firm for guiding, advising, and mentoring startups and young entrepreneurs. He has also had a stint with PricewaterhouseCoopers earlier. The microphone is all yours, sir.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to my friends Jerry and Proshenjit for bringing an outside-in perspective. However, I think we should not feel depressed. I am an indefatigable optimist. Bengal's past is not brighter than its future. So, having said that, you know, there are a number of companies which are unsung heroes here. I think Proshenjit mentioned one or two. For example, Bandhan Bank, which I was very closely associated with, is one of the first banks serving the bottom of the pyramid and is doing exceptionally well, and they are now going to merge with Grow Finance. Shrey is another one where I advise, and I'm on the boards of some of their companies. I'm the chairman of the IT company. They are quietly doing a lot of work. I don't know how many of you know that they own a bank in Austria, that they have an oil and gas business in Nigeria, that they have a dominant position in the equipment leasing business in India. And I'm a chairman of a company called Vara Technologies, which employs 4,500 people. It's owned by the Shrey Group, and it is into information technology. And it is also acquiring companies, innovative companies, to grow. Also, when you talked of Chatterjees, I think we also have to recognize that Purnendu Chatterjee is from this city. Haldia Petrochemical is a grand success. It's making a lot of money now. They also acquired Mitsubishi. So, couple of $1 billion of investment here in manufacturing. And Rajat Gupta and I serve on their US board, TCG Digital. And Rajat sits in Purnendu's office. How many of you know that one of the best carpet companies of India, OBT, is headquartered in Kolkata, run by another Chatterjee who is a entrepreneur, who has also bought Makai Bari. So there are a few, then I would like to come to the question of the difference between Bengal and Bengali. When I was president of this club, I used to remind my board members that this is called the Bengal Club and not the Bengali Club. And therefore, I think Bengal is a cosmopolitan, multiracial, multi-ethnic place where everybody is welcome. You know, the Jews were welcome here, the Armenians were welcome here. So that is a plus point for Bengal. The other thing that I would like to also question the term, who is a Bengali? For example, am I a Bengali? My forefathers came from Uttar Pradesh 6 or 7 generations ago. My mother is a Bengali. So you might say that I'm not a Bengali, but I'm as Bengali as any other Bengali can be. So having said that, let us now talk about two things. So first, I would like to dispel the notion that innovation only comes out of a garage. That two people suddenly decide, of course, lots of innovation comes out of a garage. But I'll tell you, and I will take a storytelling approach of actual innovative companies and startups that I have worked with in the last 3 years. So in big companies also innovation takes place. Google is not a small company, or Alphabet. Microsoft is not a small company. Facebook is not a small company. At one point in time, it might have been. And therefore, they also buy, acquire, assimilate, integrate innovation. So I'll give you my first story. I was working with Deloitte Consulting, and Deloitte Consulting decided to get into digital business. And they said, we would like to go and acquire a company. And they acquired a company called Ubermind, which was set up by an ex-Apple employee. He worked for a big company, and then he decided to set out on his own. His name was Shahryar Khan, of Pakistani origin, born in Pakistan, Lahore. And this company was bought by Deloitte, and I was visiting, two of my children work in Seattle, one in Amazon, the other in Microsoft. I was visiting them. And the CEO of Ubermind, who was deputed from Deloitte, was a very good friend of mine because he was in charge of technology of Deloitte in India, Mike Brinker. So Mike said that, look, I'm in deep trouble, can we have a drink? I said, fine. So we went to the Needle, we had a drink, and he told me the problem. I said, look, we are going to the Deloitte University tomorrow. Deloitte University is a 300-acre sprawling campus where the most productive place is called the Barn, which is open till 2 a.m. in the morning. You have food and drinks, and you drink locally, but think globally. So that is where all the innovation happens. So he told me, my problem is that these guys of Ubermind, they have got pink hair, they come in shorts and flip-flops, long hair, they have no office time, they want to work from home, and we have to Deloitteize them. So I said, we had had few drinks then. So I said, Mike, have you read Samson and Delilah? He said, yes. I said, the best way to destroy value is to bring a barber and a suit maker. So he said, so what should we do? I said, look, let them be as they are. Their creativity is coming from the fact that the environment is that of innovation. And 1 year later, when I went to see him, he was wearing jeans and T-shirt. And that division is called Deloitte Digital, is one of the largest practices today of Deloitte. I think it is important to recognize that large companies have lots of innovation. If you go to IBM, huge innovation is happening there. But you have to create. In Google, they used to allow Fridays for people to do skunk work. So if you can create an environment of innovation, then innovation happens. But I'm not going to speak all the time about big companies. I'm going to talk about small companies that I work with now. So for those who are students and who want to know, you can write down 2 URLs. One is www.iimcip.org. www.iimcip.org. This is Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. Can I have a little water, please? Yes, sure. Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta has set up under Section 8, which used to be the earlier Section 25, a separate company for innovation. It's an innovation park. And it has got 2 wings. I'm on the investment board there. Most of the board members are from the private sector. And it has got 2 branches. One is they do social impact innovation, where a lot of money is coming from DFID and other multilateral agencies, and some money is sourced from CSR of companies. The other one is pure play innovation companies. So let me give you 2 or 3 examples of how these innovation companies are incubated, either virtually or physically in IMCIP. The other URL I wanted to give you was www.smart50.com. And in both these websites, you will find the details of the 40-50 companies that have been incubated and the big all-India competition that we had run globally, and the winners, the top 50, what they were doing and how they were funded. So let me give you an example of 2 or 3 startup companies. One was my company, Shoe Mantrana. Shoe Mantrana means shoe means good and Mantrana means advice. So I'll give you two companies that we incubated and helped, and I'll give you two examples of ones that are doing very well under the incubation of IMCIP. And those of you who are starting up or want to start up companies, I would encourage you to come there. There are innovators funding it, provided your company has a good business plan and it passes muster of the investment board. Now, so I'll give you 4 examples. The first two examples are the ones that I had incubated. In one, I had put in money also. So one is called Karza.in, Karza.in. What do they do? Very interesting company. 4 people, one from ex-Deloitte. They came out, they chucked up their jobs. 3 of them were bankers. They started a company to build an analytics system to figure out where, see, NPA is a big problem, bad loans. So before a loan becomes bad, how do you figure out who can be a bad borrower? And the way they did it was, I'll give you an analogy. When you prospect oil, you take seismic data, process it, and try to figure out from the characteristics where, if you dig, you will find oil. I'm using that analogy to make it easier to understand. So these guys were not only looking at financial statements, but were also looking at other social media feeds, texts. Social media feeds. Oh, thank you. Social media feeds, and what they do is, supposing some of your co-directors have swindled a bank or become bankrupt, then a red flash goes up. So not just looking at the books and data, you are also looking at unstructured data, social media feeds, etc. So they built a beautiful product, and they went to a bank. I'm not going to name the bank. And when they said that, look, this is a tool by which you can run through that. And you can see where there could be potential rogue borrowers. They said, fine, we'll buy this this tool, but we need some help. So we wrapped around some consulting around it. So these guys were giving services also. Not only running the tool, but telling them which company might become a bad borrower. There's another company in that genre, and I'm not going to name them and who's doing it. I'll give you the idea. Recently, just 2 weeks ago, we were looking at it. It also uses text-based analytics, because as you know, in an annual report, only 20% is finance or numbers. 80% is text. So they have figured out a way, and this will help people like Standard & Poor, rating agencies. It will help auditors. They are trying to do predictive analytics of stress. So I told them that you show me by running ILNFS through your system that you could have actually predicted a stress. The due diligence is not over because my team is working on it, but the first results are fantastic. There were 15 or 20 red signals that were there that could have been picked up if this tool was used. So this is one. The other one is I helped a company which was doing training through animation using vernacular. Just one example. You know, Domino's Pizza, they give an incentive to the drivers to deliver the pizza on time, because they say that if you don't deliver with such and such person, I'm not a Domino's customer, I don't know, I think 30 minutes or... Yeah, 30 minutes. Yeah. So the difficulty is that a lot of people, there are a lot of accidents because their incentive is aligned to driving fast and not driving safe. Okay. So then we said, look, we told Domino's Pizza that, look, your brand will get knocked. You will get a very bad press and media, and it's not a good thing to do. Do the right thing, don't do evil. So this, and most of these drivers do not understand English, or they know a smattering of English. They are all Hindi speaking or Bengali speaking or Telugu speaking or whatever. And as you know, technology allows you to traverse many languages if you can do that. So through animation, we taught them safe driving, rules, and so forth. So this company does vernacular training through animation. So these are the two ones that I did. Now let me give you two other examples. I've got 5 minutes. Two other examples, which is from the IMC IP stable. One of the, in startups, you must be solving a problem. If there's no problem, don't have a solution chasing a problem, right? Don't invent a problem. So this company, in our country, there's a huge problem. Our people go to temples to pray. And they offer flowers to the gods, right? And these flowers, to look fresh, are chemically treated. And where does the flower go after it goes to the gods? You can't throw it in the dustbin. You can't throw it in the drain. So you throw it in the river, the holy Ganges. And therefore, the polluted Ganges becomes even more polluted. So what do you do? A bunch of young guys, 2 engineers, they got together and found a way in which they could convert that flower into a styrofoam substitute. Okay? So now you see, you are checking all the social boxes. Indigent women, they collect these flowers. They paid some money, they earn a livelihood, they take it to a central center. Then you convert, so you don't throw it into the river. So Namami Ganga, check the box. Women empowerment, check that box. And then what you do is green. So you convert that into a styrofoam substitute. If you convert into a styrofoam substitute, then you can use it as packing material. So far it's a nice story, but not a great story, right? Because there's something missing in this story. It is not taking off like a kite. So what made it tick? One of the guys convinced the Swedish company, which is called IKEA, Americans call it IKEA, like Iraq. So you can call it IKEA or IKEA, whichever way you like. They came and saw this product. For them, green is very important. Biodegradable is very important. So they got the order from IKEA to pack their furniture in biodegradable substitute of styrofoam derived from flowers offered to temples. Okay? And they, if you look at them, I'm not going to name the company, you can see it in the website that I've said, several $1 million of market valuation. Next one. Okay, this is a company which started off calling itself a drone company. It was not a drone company. So we said it is not a drone company because IMCIP also gives mentors who help. So it is an unmanned surveillance company. How it started, there was an army guy in the team. So he convinced people in the Indian army to sell this product where in the Siachen glacier, in sub-zero temperature, human beings cannot do a 7x24 watch, whether the Chinese are coming in or not or whatever. So you use these drones, and they did a panel which can actually manage 10 drones at a time. And they got an order for, I think, 1.5 crores. That was the first order. Did very well. And there is a huge problem of a pest called Heliopeltis, which destroys tea bushes. You know, you're a tea man, Prasenjit. You own a tea garden. And so I can sell this to you. The Heliopeltis is very difficult to control. So what the tea garden owners do or managers do is to use the Donald Trump approach, which is carpet bombing. So you go and carpet bomb the section. If you do that, you have a problem. Because if you are carpet bombing the tea garden with pesticides, the residues go into the tea. Firstly, you shouldn't do that as an ethical company. And secondly, if you are found out, you will be blacklisted. And third, your buyers will run away. They will vote with their feet. So, what you do is, you have a drone with a camera, and when it finds the attack of heliopeltis in a small section, then you do what is become popular term today, nowadays, surgical strike. So you do a surgical strike and take out the heliopeltis from that section, and don't pluck the leaves from there. So, you know, lot of things are happening here in Calcutta, we probably don't know. And last, I would finish with a little bit of semi-commercial, but this is, I have no commercial interest in it. You have read in the papers that in BGBS, it has been announced that Fujisoft is coming to Calcutta. It's a company with 17,000 Japanese engineers, and the first time they are setting up in India. They're doing many things. You can read up in the press, Google it, but there's one small thing I'll say and finish my talk. You know, in the jewelry business, there's tremendous amount of creativity in Bengal. A lot of jewelers in Bengal. There are 3 layers. But you know, what is happening is that even if you design a good jewelry, Sabyasachi does it. They have Versace, we have Sabyasachi. So, so even if he does it, even if he does it well, the grandsons of these jewelers are not coming into the trade because they don't want to tell their girlfriends, what do you do? Oh, I'm making jewelry. So what is happening is that 3D manufacturing, which is also known as additive manufacturing, is a huge, it will bring revolution to Howrah, to our engineering industry, where you have skills. But now what is happening is there will be 3 grades of people. There will be one grade of people who are designers, who can be anywhere. They can be in Italy, they can be in Milano, they can be in Calcutta, they can be in Surat, wherever. And the designers will be the creative people. Then there will be computer engineers who will program these 3D machines so that even if the 3D program is here, you can print a jewelry in Bombay. The supply chain will be completely disrupted. You can print a Toyota parts in Purulia, even if the design is in Nagoya. So now what will happen is that, and the third category will be people who are mass customizing jewelry. If you talk to your wife or your girlfriend or your sister or whatever, you'll find that no woman wants to go to a wedding party to see that the next lady is wearing exactly the same jewelry. You know, this is what is going on. So mass customization is required. Little bit of tweak, some amount of personalization, and so this 3D manufacturing will revolutionize many of the SME industries in Bengal. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker comes from a very different sort of part of our economy, and that's social enterprise. It gives me great pleasure to invite Joydeep Mukherjee, who worked in the US for many years and then came back and handheld a series of insurance companies to set up their operations in India.
I'm going to speak on is a new business enterprise, a new animal that has come about, which is called social enterprise. Now, what is a social enterprise? A social enterprise is a new way of doing business, which is doing good by being good. By doing good to society, you do good work for the company and for your employees and for your shareholders. Now, when I was young, which is centuries ago, you know, there used to be this eternal question, in a startup, do you focus on growth or do you focus on profits? And let me take a quick, from all of you students, raise of hands saying, how many would you think growth is most important in a startup? And how many of you think earning a profit or surplus is most important in a startup? Growth, let's see. Profit. And the answer is, of course, yes. You have to have both. You can't just go blindly for growth or for profit. You need to have profitable growth. But the times they are changing, as Bob Dylan says, and now you have to have a social impact as well. Because the consumers will reward you for it. The consumers, given 2 parallel companies providing the same level of service or same products or offerings will look at you and say, what are you doing for this environment? What are you doing for women empowerment? What are you doing for society? And I will reward you for it. And that is why companies like Whole Foods earn 20x times the NASDAQ averages, because they have demonstrated that they're doing good. So it's not just a question of social enterprise or doing something good for society. It makes sound commercial sense to do it. So you create a company that delivers both social impact and commercial impact, and this requires a level of business structuring and planning that has no benefit from existing models or templates, as this is an industry first, where you focus on both shareholders as well as the society and the lives of people that you touch. So first thing I'll talk about is, so my background you've seen has been a global CFO. I came back to India about 12 years ago with American Express, then I was with HSBC, MetLife, and Aviva. And then about 5 years ago at 50, I realized that I needed to do something seriously important about my Karma bank account. I was seriously negative, and I said I have to do something good to society and not wait longer. So I started looking around and saying where I could make a difference. So this social enterprise came out, and I'm going to talk about a company which we formed in Kolkata by Radha Basu and myself. And what we decided to do was we were going to, it's a human-empowered computer digital company specifically created to deliver on-demand digital data services and affect social and economic change. What this long sentence means is, we said that we are going to create a very high-tech computer company, IT services company, dealing with artificial intelligence and machine learning and curated crowd. But we were going to do it out of girls from Mityaburuz, ex-Naxalites from Bihar. And through today's technology, we were going to translate this work back to them, to their communities. We were not going to say that come to Gurgaon, come to Calcutta, come to Bombay to do the IT work. We'd say, you stay in Ranchi, we'll bring the work to you. You stay in Mityaburuz or Baripur, we'll bring the work to you. And we will be doing it with class 12, college graduates, but we'd only be doing artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision at that level of IT. So before I do this, here's this young girl called Rehana. And just to put it in context, when we started 5 years ago, we were earning about $100,000 in revenue for the year. Right now, we're at a run rate of $1 million in revenue. I've left them, but this is what we created, the enterprise we created. But more important than the money, more important than the funding we received, more important than the employee count that has gone up from 58 to close to 2,000 people, more important than the almost close to 10 centers that we have. We opened the latest center in New Orleans because the mayor of New Orleans said the poor of US deserve equally the same chance to be productive in this brave new world of ours. But more important to me than all of these financial metrics that we have made and the shareholders and paying back money before time is this young girl. When we started our first center in Mityaburuz, and it was an all-Muslim, all-girls center, the word had gone out saying that nobody should work for iMerit because they were suspicious, truly, because we had set a lot of bad precedents of entrepreneurs who would use internet to bring in all sorts of bad influences into a conservative society. And so the word went out and the fatwa went out that nobody should work for iMerit. So the girls, a few of the girls used to wear the burqas, and it's an extremely conservative society, as many of you know. So they used to wear their burqas, go out and say they were going to their friend's house, and come to the iMerit Center and work for a couple of hours. And so they started making a change in the society. And once they started earning 3 times the family income in their modest salary that used to earn. You know, the hands used to go up and say, you can't get me married as a child bride anymore. You can't stop this violence anymore. These young Muslim girls. And the proof of the pudding is for this girl, a year and a half later after we started Mityaburuz, and when they were banned from working, the father came and said, Sir, aap ek ladki le li, meri dusri ko bhi le lijiye. And that's when you realize that you've made a real change in society, not just created a grand company, but made a societal impact. And that's what I'm just talking from Rupender. What he said is for a startup, the first thing you have to understand is what is the problem you're trying to solve. Unless there is a problem you identify that you're going to solve, how you do it is the second part. Do you do it as a social enterprise? Do you do it as a private limited company? How do you structure it to be most effective? But the first question is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And the problem here was the IT revolution was happening. India was becoming one of the top digital IT countries in the world. But the IT revolution has completely left the young boys and girls in tier 2, tier 3, and the sub-tier 2 towns. So that was a problem we had to solve. And we said, the solution is not for you to come to Calcutta. The jobs we will bring, because the technology allows it, to you. And we will, where Infosys and TCS were hiring IIT graduates for artificial intelligence, and they would be online in a couple of weeks. We said, we'll wait a couple of years. We will invest in this training for you. And that's another of the learnings. I'll skip a lot of the charts, so don't worry me talking. Another learning that I have from social enterprises. When you think you're doing good for these people, you're thinking you're making a social impact and you're making a profitable business. And suddenly you realize you create a new business model, which is so revolutionary that when we invested a year and a half into this young girl, saying, don't worry, we are behind you. The salaries were much lower, and we said, just do the learning curve and go up the value chain. But when there was a bandh or when there was a disruption in India, these girls would say, Jada, because the company should not suffer, we will stay the night in the office. We did not have to go to them and say, we have a deadline. So you create a band of these employees which are unheard of. They're so passionately fierce and so passionately loyal that they would come to you and say, we will do the job because the pride is there for you. So that's a unique benefit I've seen in the last 3 social enterprises that we work, that the profits are there, the largest is there, identify the problem, but then you realize the true benefit is understanding how you make an impact and how you create a new business model. So all these we've done, so a driven and inspired workforce. And you see, this is where iMerit was. It's recognized by Forbes, at USA Today and Economy, and that's Vinod Khosla saying how much money he's invested and Impact Alpha. And USA Today, the newspaper, largest newspaper in the US, came to Kolkata and did a story on us, saying Kolkata is India's untold tech story and most challenging. So this is where, if you are entrepreneurs in Bengal, I'm giving you a true life story as to how it should work. Understand the problem, define for yourself how are you solving the problem, and build in a social good. It invariably will work for you. Be patient, be resilient, passionate, and work for you. Now, I'm going to take one more example. So I've left iMerit a couple of years ago. I'm still attached to them in multiple ways. But then, and so this was the impact also we had, 40,000 individuals trained, 82%, and this is the empowered society. And you see these girls and you think, you must be doing something right. Because one of the things is, you go to bed every day with a very happy smile on your faces. And that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Now I'm going to talk to you about transforming the lives of urban elderly. This is the company I've co-founded right now. And this is very personal. Last 5 years ago, and this is again the question of solving a problem. About last 5 years ago, my mother lives in Kolkata by herself. We'd been abroad for 30 years. My dad's died 35 years ago. And despite me telling my mom 100 times to come and live with us, she lives in the home my father built for her. All her memories are here, associations here, people dear to her are here. And maybe very as important, I am there in Gurgaon. So she would not move in with me, for sure. So last 5 years ago, I saw that, her health was failing. She's 80 years old now, so 74, 76. So, and a widow living by herself in a large 10,000 square feet. I saw the whole system, the environment was turning more and more difficult for her. And ranging from doctor visits and medical classification to one flush not working in a bathroom, my mother's solution would be bathroom ta bondo kore dao. Aro 5টা রয়েছে ওইটা use kori. So they were shrinking their lives, literally. And we said it's not just we as NRIs, but the people who live in Gurgaon, my mother in Kolkata, we needed to provide, and now it was not realistic for, my mom wouldn't shift with me, and it's not realistic for me to come and say that I'll come and shift here in Kolkata permanently. So we started looking around and saying, what sort of care could I provide to my mother? What exists right now? And we found it's all very transactional. You can hire a care attendant, but the care attendant you can hire for 3,000 rupees or you can hire for 300 rupees. But there is no guarantee, no standards as to the reliability, the dependability, whether he'll come the next day, what sort of a person you have in the house. You pay the money and you wish for the best. That's the sort of care that you have in India. There's no one to really provide an ecosystem of care, saying, don't worry, we will be the sons and daughters. We are not here to replace you, we are here to supplement you, and through technology and through a empowered workforce, which I'll come to again later. Saying, how do we recreate that peace of mind, both in terms of the parents as well as in the caregivers, to say, don't worry, we are there and we'll make sure everything works. So, people like her, she's my favorite. Manorama auntie, 94 years old, lives in Delhi, in Gurgaon, and her sons and daughters also live in Gurgaon. But she wants to be independent also. She wanted time. She lives by herself in the same building. And she's the sort of person, you know, who says that she loves music, etc. So when we were looking for the attendant, so we said that we would find someone who does bhajans and can give her some good company. She says, heck no. I want someone who knows the latest Bollywood numbers. What is this bhajan that I'm going to listen to at 94? So she's a dawn, you know, I mean. So she was the sort of people we also had to cater to, saying, how do we give her the company? So, and in today's world, what has happened? So what was the fundamental problem? The fundamental problem was that the elders faced a host of challenges given the fundamental shifts and changes in their environment. And what do I mean by environment shift? The social factor, becoming more and more nuclear companies. There was a demographic of 100 million elderly. So seniors were compromising on their needs, the loneliness, lack of compensation, engagement. So all of this, the basic eco-structure in a joint family, the support structure that was there, was not present anymore. The seniors were more healthier, had more affluence, but they were simply not getting that care and support. There's 100 million of them right now. And even if you take 1% as the urban educated, there's 1 million people growing at 6% CAGR year by year. So we started and saying, when we started and we talked to our peers, what would you do to ensure your parents were doing well? So first of all, as children, we said health. It's most important to know my mom and dad have a good doctor system, have a good medical system coverage then. Then we said home and home security. Make it fall proof. Make sure that the domestics who come are vetted, validated. Make sure the police reports are done. So home and health were most important to us. To us, that was the extent of the problem that we were going to solve. You know, not on a transactional way. When we asked the parents, what were they missing in their lives? They said we needed someone to talk to. We wanted to be relevant all over again in our society. We needed someone, companionship, engagement. We needed our chores to be handled. So we said, you know what? Let's just first create a community. This company started 2 years ago. We said we'll start creating a community. And we realized this companionship, engagement, having a third person, often equal standing. It's not a domestic servant that will stand when you're sitting down, but will sit next to you with the same educational qualifications, with the same socioeconomic background. They needed someone to talk to, an independent person. Companionship. They wanted to be part of a larger society of similar people. So these are these examples. This lady, who I'm not going to take names, her son lives in Singapore actually. And he said, my mother stopped talking for the last 5 years. She will not talk to anyone. And we have this system where you have a detailed visit report and a WhatsApp report all on technology. And the first thing that came after the first meeting, this young girl who's a care counselor, we stayed for 2 hours and spoke of geography, history, and social sciences with auntie. And the son's reaction was, I don't believe it. I mean, I just don't believe that my mom would relate to this person. And these are just the stories that you have. The lady on the left is actually my mother. So the heading is Sons and Daughters We Wish at Home. And my mom says Samarth has become my family, and Rima, who's the care counselor giver, is my guardian angel. So again, how did we go about this? We said, here is the problem, here is the solution, we need to provide this ecosystem of care. And when we realized the social impact of it, what was required as the, how to address the true pain points of the, because we were dealing with the urban elderly only. I mean, we were not equipped, or we did not know enough, or we were not strong enough to deal with the rural poor as well. Urban educated elderly is our market. And so we said, who would be the caregivers? Who would be our care counselors? So we started looking around, and normally you have this either young people or nurses, and some people have tried with the army jawans and veterans, all very right-intentioned people. But when we realized the companionship was at least 50% important to these elderly people, living alone in their own homes without their children's support in the same environment, we started looking around and found these ladies in the age group of 35 to 55 who held academic degrees, their PhDs and their chartered accountants and their MBAs, their engineers. And there's so many of them we create who's at a variable model. We have, let me put it this way, Uberized institutionalized work, institutionalized care. So when these ladies have stepped away consciously from their corporate life and said, no, I would like to be in an environment where I can make some money, because they would like to make some money for themselves, but at the same time do something good by talking to the elders, taking care of the elders, etc. And our biggest challenge, which we thought, was where do we find these ladies? Because we can do the reference checks, we can do the training, we can do all of those technology stuff and all of that. But are there enough people like that in India to do it? Right now, I'm proud to say we started the care program 6 months ago. We have 55 such ladies on file right now, and we have 1,500 applications on file. And one of the biggest problems of outsourcing care to a company is you wonder, who is this person who's going to come to my parents' home, because of the security aspect of it, right? And through these ladies, you create this unique business model. This educated PhD or an engineer who comes from a very good reference family, who's prominent in the society, you take that care, that worry, minimize it at least by 90%. You have a variable workforce, and wherever you go, whichever the other care companies are, they think that, you know, you have to have 5,000 attendants on board, which are fixed costs and stuff like that. And here you're creating a variable model that we can start a new location with one client, and we are unit positive from day one. So we are expanding. In 6 months, we've gone on to 21 cities right now. We are at 75 clients and growing every day. I mean, every day is a new city that we, Nashik, Indore. And it's not just Bangalore, Hyderabad. Kolkata is actually one of our biggest markets, because all of us, rogues like us, have left, and our parents are still over here. So there is an inherent demand that we've created for our parents. But Calcutta, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, of course. But think of places like Jamshedpur. Think of places like Jabalpur, Indore, Chandigarh. We are finding these people, and these demands are always there. So exactly what Rupendra says, find out the problem and see a creative, unique way of solving that problem. Don't just follow the path. Step back and see what makes sense. So we've created this business model. And for these ladies also, you know, so again, same as I married. When we recruited these ex-Naxalites and these Muslim women from Metiaburus, everybody laughed at us and said, they won't be able to do high-end IT. Same thing when we started this care program, they said, oh, you're hiring these ladies don't exist. You won't be able to train them up into the technology, into the reporting, into the WhatsApps, into the visit reports. And you do good by also empowering them. You know, you provide them an opportunity. It's their second wind in their lives to be productive all over again. Now that their kids have grown up, their husbands are also fine. So now they can have this spare time to devote. So you're actually creating this cadre of women. You're bringing them into the workforce, which are no longer there. And these are some of them, you know, BCom, DBM, Entrepreneur, X. These are all just examples of our secret sauce. These care attendants plus an intelligent technology platform behind them and the rigor that goes into is what's powering Samarth right now. Where are we right now? And this is real. In 6 months, it started 2 years ago, but in 6 months, it's really we've pushed the pedal because we're building a community. We have reached close to 1 million seniors through our outreach programs. We built 30,000 Samarth community in 150 cities. Non-transactional care, built national partnerships, strong management team, etc. We've now opened our office in Houston, in Texas, as a first beachhead for the NRI customers from US because of the inherent time difference that we have. We already have strong presence from UK and Singapore, and we are starting to build our offices there as well. And we were winner of the 2018 healthcare. So this is that establishment of an operating model, and by the lives you touch, which you talk. This is our motto, sons and daughters we wish we had at home. This is one of my favorite pictures that I have. So what is our secret to success? And this is where both Rupendra, Jerry, I think Jerry was the one who pointed this first out, is your team. If you're fair to your team, if you're honest, fair, and you choose your team. So our secret of success is the best team in the world. I completely echo Jerry, Prashanjit, and Rupendra who had made this point. So this is our heritage, this is our DNA, this is who we are. So again, the social enterprise, bringing it all back to you in a summary, is we are solving a fundamental problem. The first thing you do is identify the problem. This is what Rupendra said, and it's not by social enterprise, you identify a social problem, but there is a million other problems that you can solve, but be very clear what is the problem you're trying to solve. Step back and see how are you going to solve that problem, because people are just going to say what you're suggesting doesn't work. Take baby steps first, understand the fundamentals. First one was rooted in Kolkata, the second one, Samarth, is the biggest population in Kolkata right now. We're opening our office right now in Kolkata to take this forward. So entrepreneurship does work in Kolkata, you know. So, and with social enterprise, Shakespeare, after all, I'm a Bengali, we are such stuff the dreams are made of. That's what you become. You just don't become an employee, an organization. We are such stuff dreams are made of. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Moshumi Ghosh is again one of the best known faces in the city. Years ago, she ventured into private education, set up an enormously successful chain of educational institutions.
Having young students here, entrepreneurship is all about to be or not to be, to do or not to do. It is not a must in life. It is important whether your head tells you to do it, whether your heart tells you to do it, whether both tell you to do it or whether none tell you to do it. And the most difficult question is when one of them tells you to do it. And let's take this situation up that of the head and the heart, well, both tells you to do it is easy, you go for it. Both tells you do not do it, it's easy, you don't go for it. But the head tells you do not do it and the heart tells you do it. What do? The head tells you do it, but the heart doesn't like it. What do? Here I have a liberty of delving into my life. For me, entrepreneurship is more like life, more like love. If both tells you, fine, otherwise you listen to your heart. And you try and train your head or pick your head, you pick your brain and see how best you can do it. And whether you can find out models to do it, whether innovation comes in, the reach is important, and what is your priority. Why did I delve into entrepreneurship late in my 40s? Why? the question was there, like our previous speakers did tell us about it, that there has to be a problem or a question of priority. I always, very early in life, chose Kolkata to be my city for the rest of my life. Maybe a blunder, I do not know, but I did choose. And I fought against all odds. In fact, most of my family stays abroad. From class 8 or so, they were very particular that I should go abroad for my higher education. I chose to marry in Calcutta to my classmate, many of you know it. And I said, I'm going to stay in Calcutta. What pained me? And I started working early in life. Even before I was a professional accountant, I started working in the industry. And I moved to academics. And I was in one of the leading premier business schools for about 15 years. I could see in late 90s and early 2000 that all my friends, you know, in their families, no one stayed after class 12. School education was it. And not everybody gets into the IITs or the Jadavpur universities. So train full of students going southbound for higher education, particularly higher technical education. IT was coming. So quickly, I'll name the institution, though I would have loved to avoid it, but it comes as a case study, that when I was doing my classes in IIM Calcutta, finance classes, we had case studies. And I always identified with the company or the corporate or somebody in the case who was kind of representing the company rather than the other side of the table. So maybe somewhere the seed was sown, and thought about it that what if we put up a technical institution? Do we have the money? Do you need money for entrepreneurship? Can you be trained to be an entrepreneur? I'll gradually try to come to these questions. We did not have any money. Both of us were young, had very, very young kids, and had an apartment in a prime location of Calcutta. Started thinking what to do. Okay, that would come as a security, but as mere bank loan, and why would the bank give us? And as you know, AICT, etc., if you put up an engineering college, the land, the building, the norms were higher in those days. So for 3 years, what we did was IT education. We built up a brand which was kind of Government of India Enterprise, CMC. And very quickly, in less than 3 years' time, I think 2.5 years' time, we are the 4 largest centers in Calcutta. Each center had about 14, 15 apartments, the larger center. And you see, the entire Jadavpur University kind of flocked to Goriahat CMC because in Jadavpur, IT training was not there. But the students could see it coming. And as a finance person, I was stunned that how can you have a bottom line of more than 80%? Because you see, every 20 computers comprises of a class, which you can roll over, return on assets, it's tremendous. But we knew that we would come into structured education. So maybe understanding finance did help us in the sense that in 2001-2, when we started Future Institute of Engineering and Management in our Shonarpur campus, it could start debt-free. Because in those days, if you remember, some of you, I'm probably older than many of you here, most of you here maybe, do not go by looks. I'm sure I look younger than my real age. But the fact is, those days, the EMI one had to give if you bought an apartment and the rent you paid for that apartment was more or less same. So, you know, in these 2.5 years, we had probably bought about 26, 27 apartments in Kolkata, which at a shot we sold out, and the campus started debt-free. So here is probably one thing that maybe my finance background could have helped me, but I'm sure you don't need a great finance background for this. Okay, so the first question, that can the train's journey be reversed from Kolkata to the southern states to perhaps stop at Kolkata? And other institutions coming, that was the seed of private technical education in West Bengal. Thereafter, you know, once you start, the story becomes simpler perhaps. To sustain is very difficult. I think to start is easier. But are you driven by quality? In IIM, I get the best brains. Here, perhaps not the best brains, but perhaps people who need me more. So issue is, from there, of course, today, I would cut a long story short because that's besides the point. Today we have more than 4,500 students or so. I'll quickly come, I know I'm standing between the lunch, so let me think of food. Like food, you know, all your sensory organs have to support the fact that you're an entrepreneur. With your eyes, you have to look at the big picture. You have to hear the feedback. You have to nurture the child or whoever. You talk about a child, you talk about a husband, you talk about your boyfriend, whatever it is. You have to nurture. And that you have not eaten doesn't matter. That you're kind of from a comfortable journey, people call you mad. In fact, people did call us mad that why would you leave a job in IIM Calcutta and start a journey which you do not know? Something, nobody in my, in both our families were ever entrepreneurs. What is this journey that you're talking about? So my seniors did tell me that you keep a lien in IIM Calcutta so that you fail and you come back. And an element of mistrust everywhere. More than people supporting, even your well-wishers, they're very concerned that you're going to fail. There have been mistrust. From where did Future get the money? Is it from a good source? Do you really invite that lady to a club to speak? How do they get the money? That was, even now, who has funded? That question I'm used to kind of battling. Cutting it to healthcare. Again, we have the best of doctors and you're here, fine. So he was talking about Probashi. In fact, just back from London. People do extend hands if you have the power. They want to come back, they want to give to the city, they want to invest and so on and so forth. In fact, the Future Oncology Hospital is taking shape and I have my mentor in front of me, Dr. Bhaskar Banerjee. I've been very fortunate with my mentors, I would say. It's and you have to make a tough choice. In the healthcare sector, the affordable healthcare which is going on. Now that the hospital is being built with 250 odd beds, do you compromise? Do you compromise on infection control? Do you compromise and get a linear accelerator, which had the funds been there, you would have got that? Every decision is so painstakingly have to be addressed as to where do you position yourself, what is your question in life, is there anything to take away, or is there things to be given back? Even if I'm not in the corporate sector, so-called corporate sector, here too, education, as you know, in India has to be under trust of society. Healthcare, you have an option. We didn't, because the bankers were very clear. In fact, I think Pradeep was talking to me that I should come up with the challenges. When we decided to come into healthcare, healthcare incidentally is not debt-free, education is. Bankers had a question, not one question, series of questions. What were the concerns? One, you come from West Bengal. Can I do anything today? No. Two, you've never been in healthcare. I said, I've never been an engineer. We started with an engineering college. You don't have court doctors in the trust. And they choose that they'll fund the trust and not a company, a corporate. It can come in later. That's a part of the business model. Issue is you have to be very, very patient. And students, nothing succeeds like success. If you're not in IIM, if you're not in IIT, there is no reason that you cannot. We have ample success stories in Future, and I'm sure elsewhere, where of innovation, of entrepreneurship. Do not look back too much. Do not look back. Whatever has happened has happened. But from now, be very honest to yourself. And I'm so glad that the thing came up that how do you build a team? You have to be very transparent. That this is it, I stand for it. I'm very happy to say that, attrition has been one of our success factors. Lack of attrition, I mean. Our principal is the longest standing principal under any private engineering college in West Bengal. I think in India also by now. Now, why do people stay with you? It's not necessarily money. You know, if you're tough, you're tough. If you're not tough, you're not tough. But don't try to act the way you're not. Be transparent that this is it. If along the journey you lose friends, you lose friends. But the fact is, no point acting. Do not act. Even the cheating, I mean, I was so happy with your speech. Even the cheating. I mean, okay, I've done that, so I'm not with you. You've done that, I'm not with you. So take your decisions, the hard decisions. Having said that, it's a very, very tough battle in front of us, the oncology hospital. It's big for our boots, let me tell you. And now is the phase 2, where we are trying to kind of going, I wouldn't say global, but global also. I mean, we would have exchange programs and tie-ups and clinical research and teaching and training along in the healthcare sector. Education, like he said, that, you know, a girl of 22 chooses not to stay in the group, go somewhere else because her passion drives her there. So it is very important that we do not stay in our comfort zone. And coming to placements, you know, our students, we have 2 categories of students apart from school children, which is technical students and non-technical students. They hardly are in the city, excepting the IT bigwigs. They are all outside. So what? Fine. It's not necessary that everybody like me tells that I stay with my parents. No, it's not necessary. It's a question of one's priorities. And possibly, now that I look back, lesser of this, the better it is, I feel, at this age. That, you know, I've never instilled any such things in my children. That you take, wherever your passion takes you, you go there. So it's a story which can continue, but I think let's keep it brief and questions can come. Thank you.
Thank you, Moushumi. Dr. Bhaskar Banerjee is chairman of the Calcutta Stock Exchange, a former partner in Pricewaterhouse.
See, I must clarify that I'm a late invitee to these proceedings, and I will not speak on entrepreneurship per se, and you have listened to great minds on this, but I wanted to share with you certain aspects of related to fundraising for entrepreneurs, how to raise funds. Because from experience one finds that normally startups start floundering. I know I'm being negative, but startups start floundering after making a promising start. I'll illustrate this point. You see, initial funds probably I'll be very brief, hence I'm coming to the point directly. Initial funds may be somewhat possible to raise, say you need a crore and a half for doing the initial bit in a startup. But the subsequent fundraising, the phase 2, is a huge problem. Subsequent funds which you need for expanding your company, that is always difficult to raise. So one wanted to talk about a possible source of funding which entrepreneurs can use as and when they operate for a year or 2. This is what is called a SME platform in Bombay and national stock exchanges. I don't know whether you're aware of it. What is happening is that if your company is in existence for a couple of years and your net worth has reached a certain figure, then you can actually float shares in Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange in the SME platform. It's called Small and Medium Enterprises platforms. The requirements here are much simpler than normal issues. And if you comply with a few of these norms, which is that you must be a profit-making organization, you will have a positive net worth, and you should have tangible net assets of about 3 crores odd. Once you comply with these conditions, you can actually float shares in Bombay BSE and NSE. The advantage of this course also is that both Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange are extremely keen to invite companies to list with them. So therefore, the process they have made extremely easy in the whole matter. So what is happening is that if you want to float shares in BSE, NSE or in their small exchange platforms, what you have to do is that you have to do a basic feasibility study first of your own company. In other words, if a kind of, you appoint a merchant banker normally, you appoint an investment banker and carry out a feasibility study of the company. You must have a story to tell. If you have a story to tell, then the next issue is to translate that story into in proper financial workings, which you need to do, and you can't do it yourself, so you need to hire an investment banker for that purpose. And once they do the study, then you can come to the exchange and make the necessary applications, and then the processing can be easier.
Gandharv, may I request you to take the stage? Gandharv represents the Medica Healthcare Group. He's Associate Vice President with them.
I'm here to speak on behalf of the Medica Synergy. So we're the first private equity investment in healthcare in Bengal, and the biggest one to date. I've mainly been more for, at least earlier on, I was a passive sort of participant with our growth story, but now over the years I'm getting more and more involved, obviously through the years and sort of moving up the ranks. So what I actually want to do is, and the way I want to structure this discussion is that I'm just going to run through the presentation really quickly. It's mainly just information, and then I want to open it up to questions, because I think we'll gain a lot more value by just sort of interacting with one another. I've taken notes and they're bound to distract me, but I'll try for them not to. So, we started in about 2008, and we've done a fair bit of work in the past 10 years. We've grown from a single hospital of about 150 beds to a chain of about 1.5 grand. We have a very strong sort of East Indian presence. We're in Jharkhand, we're in Assam, Calcutta, Bengal, and Orissa. And we've worked very strongly with the government in the past couple of years, and I think we've sort of established ourselves over the past 10 years as a mainstay in this part of the world, this part of the country. Working in Calcutta definitely has certain what's the word I'm looking for? It has certain challenges. One of them has obviously been in healthcare, and obviously politically as well. There've been significant headwinds. So you've noticed over the years, profit margins have been slowly eroded through certain steps taken by the government, and so that's actually led us to grow in different ways. For example, previous years hospitals could be completely profitable with maybe 60% occupancies, but now if you're not hitting at least 80 to 85%, profitability is at a bit of a stretch. So you need to find other ways to control the costs and drive profitability. One of the things we're currently doing is de-risking our business. That means geographically de-risking the business, and that's by pulling people not only just from Calcutta in, but spreading our network into the hinterlands, and now we're actually working on growing more internationally. So we're actually looking at patients obviously from Bangladesh, which is right across the border, to Laos and Cambodia. But that should be coming up in the next couple of years. So, where we're heading now, at least in the next 5 to 10 years, that we're trying to establish ourselves as the #1 hospital for medical tourism in Eastern India and South and Southeast Asia, as we discussed earlier. And we're elevating our level of care to quaternary care. So we're talking about liver transplants, bone marrow transplants, and getting linear accelerators and moving into oncology in a big way. Finally, we're looking at doubling our capacity, and as I mentioned earlier, we're actually looking at opportunities in, for example, Uttar Pradesh and further west. So, I guess what I'm going to do is that I'm going to really step into how this ties into entrepreneurship. When we started off with a team that was solidly middle-aged by the time they got into entrepreneurship. So, entrepreneurship is not necessarily something for the youth, right? In fact, there's studies that show the later you get into a private enterprise of your own making, the more successful you tend to be, because as you go through the years, you actually discover what the pitfalls of the business might be, where the opportunities actually do lie, where profitable opportunities do lie, and where there is scope to really make money. So, I guess the three ways that I guess one gets into business as a business owner is by one starting up, right? So that's the classical Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, or the big stories that that really make the news and have big major biographies written about them. The second is similar to actually what we did, which is we worked for a couple of decades, established ourselves as professionals, and then sought funding from the market. Obviously because the market funds operators and people who are comfortable, who have significant experience under their belts, and are willing to bring their expertise to a new enterprise through opportunities. And the last one is actually something that doesn't happen very often in India, because promoters tend to hold on to businesses even if they're not necessarily doing it as well, if the next generation is not even inclined to take the business forward. But it is a more popular model out west, and I think it's slowly moving east, where it's referred to as succession entrepreneurship, where somebody might come in to a current business and talk to the owners and say, look, the next generation is not interested, you probably don't have the time for it, so why don't you sell the business? It's just another asset. It's like a house, it's like a car, just sell it, and we'll take it forward, we'll move forward with it. One of the examples of this I wanted to bring up, which is a bit of both, right? It's a bit of both starting up and finding an existing business. So I actually went to watch Gully Boy yesterday, and it's sponsored by Bira. And what's really interesting is that if you look at it as a case study, beer is not necessarily a market you would want to enter 5 years ago. It was a fairly consolidated market with lots of entrenched players who'd been around for decades. So most studies would tell you not to touch that market at all, right? Most business cases would ask you not to touch that market. But Bira has done an incredible job with bringing beer to the millennial population, and that's been done through amazing guerrilla marketing, brand identification, and a great distribution network, right? And going really ground up. So rather than going through traditional business routes, I believe they actually established their brand by going bar to bar and making sure it was stocked personally by the founder themselves. There is opportunity everywhere, and the trick is to figuring out how you want to get there. Whether you get there, if it's an entrenched industry, you spend a little time in the industry, maybe a couple of decades, you find out what the niches are and you work there. If it's something that's upcoming, like let's say cryptocurrency, then you're not going to find anything that's been around for a while. So you want to start up, you want to put your money in and really experiment. It's a very high risk, very high reward. And the last one is finding an existing business and trying to figure out whether that's a business you want to get into, whether you want to do a roll-up, which means you buy multiple businesses in the same sort of industry and then conglomerate them and cut out inefficiencies. So, these are the major ways of sort of starting up. I have another slide towards the end on just how to think about the future, but I can just leave that up, and then I'm more than happy to open up for discussion.
All right, thank you very much. Now, I would like to request Mr. Jayanta Saha, representing Khadims, to come up with his presentation, please.
Okay, I completely acknowledge that the time is short, so I'll keep it short and sweet. We are here to talk about Khadim in general and the robust, the business model of Khadim and what makes Khadim an exciting story. So, started its journey in 1965 under the leadership of Shri S.P. Roy Burman. So, this gentleman is one of the most successful Bengali entrepreneur of Bengal, and he started his career very small. He started as an accountant in one of the shops called KM Khadim in a small place called Chitpur in Kolkata. And from there, he took over the business from Mr. KM Khadim, who was a Bangladeshi gentleman. And the only request he made to Mr. Burman was that just retain this name Khadim. And which is why we today carry this name Khadim. And Mr. Burman has not only made big in his own lifetime, he is a real entrepreneur in the sense because he's one of those mentors where a lot of the speakers have mentioned that you need a very good mentor. Dr. Mushimi has just now said the importance of having a good mentor in your entire journey. And today, if I'm not wrong, if I look at the footwear industry per se, he has created more than 50 vendors who have turned into entrepreneur, and their size is nothing less than 50 to 100 crores. And most of them are today the vendors for Khadim, Bata, Relaxo, and so on and so forth. So he is one guy who is not only made big for him, he has also thought about people who has worked under him and made them also grow big. Now the leadership is under Mr. Siddhartha Roy Burman. So we'll talk about the vision to be in every Indian step. So that's the size of the market for Khadim. How do we do it? So the mission is ensuring customer delight, stakeholders return by delivering quality, affordable product through an extensive network. The philosophy 3 years back used to be affordable and durable. Now with the changing taste of the customer, we have changed to affordable fashion. Because today the youngsters who come to the shops, they are no more talking about, so if you look at people who used to go to Khadim for 10 years back, they used to come and say, we want something durable. Khadim was like, synonym with durability, which is why people used to come. But today youngsters, when they go, they are not talking about durability, they are talking about fashion. And that's this shift in the customer behavior. Earlier, people used to have one pair of shoes. Today, on an average, an Indian has 2 pairs of shoes. And if you go to the metro cities or tier 1, tier 2, you'll not be surprised, people are having 6 pairs of shoes. And especially in ladies, they might have a dozen or more. So that makes us more happy. So a bit about the culture in Khadim. Driven by business goals, agility to respond to the market need, adaptable to the fast-changing technology. So we are very fast in adopting technology, be it in our own business, be it in our retail segment, be it in our production process. Transparent process and policies, interlinked cross-functional goals. So when I say interlinked cross-functional goals, so the last 3 years we have been following a process called business balance scorecard. And by the virtue of balanced scorecard, we have interlinked all the goals of all the different functions. So to give you a small example, if we talk about people, so these are the people who are going to create internal processes, and these processes can lead to good products that will help us to get better customers, and that will help us to get better business. So it's all working on a balanced scorecard method. It's a people-centric organization. Building internal talent pool. Khadim believes in developing internal talent. And if you look at Khadim, I was pretty surprised because I am one of the youngest employees of Khadim. And why I say so? Because I'm 3 years old, and when I come with a predominantly telecom experience of 13 years, where people change their clothes faster than the tariff plans, right? So when I come and I do the, sorry? Yes. And so when I come to Khadim and do a kind of assessment, I found that the average life of an employee in Khadim is 12 years, which is mind-boggling by industry standards. And especially if I look at other retails, they're struggling with retention. So there has to be a lot about the culture of the organization. Somebody said it's not money which is going to retain your people. It's the kind of culture which you develop in the organization which is going to retain your people. Recognition performance. A culture that fosters innovation. So this is the organizational structure that we follow, where you'll see that most of the people lies on the bottom part of the pyramid, which is the operational, implementation, tactical, leadership, and visionary. And we have made it very short and sweet so that, there is a quick response, there is quick communication with the employees, and everybody works in sync. So a lot of the panelists here and the experts from the industry have talked about the innovation. So this is something which is very small, and whenever I go to the business school, I address a lot of young crowds, and I talk things which are very simple, and how do we do it? So think differently, that's the first thing, You will have to think out of box. There are a lot of success stories where you go and do the same thing which is happening in the market, and where you can be successful, where you might not be successful. But if you have the right model in your mind, that will make you successful. So you'll have to look for that right model. And for that, you need to do a lot of research work, that what is it that I want to do. So if I can give you some of the examples like Wow Momo, which is a success story, which is the most contemporary thing. There's a small app which is called Urban Clap. I don't know how many of you have heard about it, right? It's doing wonders. I know of a guy in Hyderabad. He's passed out from the ISB Hyderabad, and I happened to meet him, and he told me that his job is to collect the newspapers from the home, and they have just put a small box in each house, and he goes and collects, or he's got his people who goes and collect those newspaper and sell it at 20%, 25% differential to the recycling, right? So thinking differently is very, very important. Knowing your product. So what is the product that you are going to have? Is it going to be acceptable in the market? Is it different, right? What are the market size of that product? Or are you creating a product which is completely new and you have a different segment? Is there a requirement of that product in the society? Know your customers. Who are the people who are going to use this product? So you'll need to know the consumer behavior there, whether this product will be acceptable by the customer. So knowing your customer is very important, knowing their behavior is very important. And these are certain things which we completely follow in Khadims. Know the business ecosystem, the system, the entire environment on which you are going to work. So how is Khadim's innovation model working? So we emphasize on comfort. So whenever you go to buy a shoe, first thing that you ask, comfort degi na? So that's the first thing. Second is affordability, which is Khadim is known for, reliability and accessibility. So through our vast extensive network of retail network, people can access our product anywhere. So these are 4 things that we work on, and all our designers, they are also focused on this. So when it comes to comfort, durability, reliability, it's on the topmost agenda of Khadim. In fact, the manufacturing head is with me, Rajiv Mishra is here. So we have been talking about, the quality control today. So these are certain things that we work on. So I will run you through a quick snapshot of our business model. Leading food business, footwear brand in India. We are the second largest organized footwear brand. So you might ask that, okay, there are other companies which are larger than Khadim. But when I say second largest footwear retailer in India, it's one such retailer, one such company where you get products for the entire family, for every occasion, for every season. So there will be companies like VKC, there will be companies like Relaxo, which will be bigger than Khadim, but they will cater to only one particular product range. We have the entire basket of range. Largest presence in East India. We are an East dominant company. One of the top 3 players in South India. We are gaining market share pretty fast in South India. Largest footwear retail franchisee network we have. And we are a company which are getting our footprints in West and North. We are not where we are not so strong. Huge market potential. So if you look at the footwear industry per se, it's going to grow by 20% CAGR. And when we talk about the 15%, when we talk about the branded retail, branded footwear, so it is going to grow by 20%. And if you further break it into retail and distribution, retail is going to grow by 18% and distribution is going to grow by 23% CAGR. So what is it that we have done to a go-to-market strategy, two-pronged strategy, where we are de-risking our business model? So we have one is the retail business with 770 retail shops across the country, and we have distribution business where the manufacturing is completely in-house. We have 2 manufacturing plants in Kolkata which manufactures close to 1 lakh pair a day, right? And that's the business which helps you to get into the volume game. Though the margins are low, but the volumes are very high in distribution. Extensive reach. We have spoken about the reach. 23 states, 1 union territory, 770 retail shops, and wide range of 455 distributors across the country. The fifth is we are working on an asset-light model. So when we say asset-light model, we are having less of our own shops, more of our franchisee shops, right? And even if you look at the product manufacturing, close to 90% is contract manufacturing. So similarly in distribution, it's highly scalable and we are having a good amount of product mix there. Strong design capability. We have a very robust team of designers in-house who are working on giving fashion, who are working on reliability, who are working on comfort. And that's the place where it's giving growth to the top line and expansion of all our EBITDA, PAT, and so on and so forth. So this is in rough as the business model of Khadim, and this makes a big success story for Khadim. So if you look at the journey, the why Khadim is so exciting, so robust growth, that's one which we are foreseeing in the market. Khadim's positioning. So if you look at, again, I told you that it's a company which manufactures product for each and every individual of your house. Growth through asset-light model. We have already spoken about the asset-light model. And robust supply chain. So a very robust supply chain is there. So we have a strong designing team to maintain seasonal trends, give a fresh look to the stores every time, right? Professional management, a visionary promoter, stellar expected growth from the financial performance, be it the top line or EBITDA margin or the PAT margin, and very robust human capital, strong leadership, robust people practice, balanced mix of homegrown leadership and industry experts, and high retention in Khadim. That's one of the most biggest achievement of human resource in Khadim. So this is some data which I have for you. So revenue-wise, you'll see that 50% of our revenue comes from retail and 30% from franchisee business, and distribution business is 19%, which is highly scalable. And in next 5 years, I'm sure that distribution is going to overtake retail and franchisee business. Network, we have 770 networks. Distributors, we have 455 distributors. We are primarily present in metros and the tier 1 cities. And if you look at our presence, we are again dominant in east. We are consolidating our position in south, and we are going big in west and north as well. So if you look at the entire market segmentation, and if you look at the product basket that we have, we cater to the 85% of the footwear market in India. So our brands, if you look at Khadim's brand, which is covering the mass market brand, some of the Khadim brands are also covering the economy range, and then we have products, sub-brands, which are in the mid-level of the market segment. So Khadim has its own robust infrastructure, be it procurement, quality, manufacturing, warehousing, and supply chain. And all these are built on a very asset-light model. And that makes a Khadim a big success story. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can ask.
So we are coming to the last of the presentations now. And for that, we have our own Mr. Shankar Ramalingam, who is a trustee of the Calcutta Debating Circle and is a promoted director of Mega Moda Private Limited, a 100% export unit of fish and fishery products. So he has something to present for us.
Many of the points which I wanted to say has been connected, has been said by all the previous speakers. But I'm going to share something from my personal experience. I'm a product of the displacement theory which Mr. Jerry Rao mentioned. My father, in 1956, it was usual in Tamil Nadu, Tirunelveli district, for people to either go to Singapore or come to Kolkata, Calcutta in those days. My father came to Calcutta, and as usual, he used to tell me, I still don't believe it. He says you could walk into Old Post Office Street or Mission Row or all those streets in Calcutta in those days, and you could get a job in 10 minutes. Because really, he used to tell me there used to be big notices, wanted accountants, wanted clerks, wanted receptionists. Now, this is Calcutta in 1956. I have not seen it. I was born much later. And over the years, I studied in a leading school in Park Street. Rupen Roy went to the same school, Bhaskar also. And I wanted to do advertising, and in those days, my father said, advertising won't give you bread and butter. And then he put me into a financial qualification. I did my CA, I did my ICWA, etc., etc. I joined a multinational, as all South Indian Brahmins want to work in a big multinational. And 17, 18 years I worked in a multinational company. And then suddenly something in me struck. The last South Indian Brahmin leading company in India is TVS Sundaram Group Iyengar and Sons. TVS Sons does more than thousands of crores numbers. Of course, Srinivasan is now notorious for match fixing in cricket. Okay. So anyhow, so I decided now. So what I'm trying to tell here, before you become an entrepreneur, one thing I will tell you is that you should have at least 3 years your monthly expenditure, whatever it is, whether you're a bachelor or a married man or there was an example where the wife supported the promoter of Naukri.com. Who mentioned it? Mr. Basu, yeah. So I didn't have a wife who did support me. And so you should have 3 years of money in your pocket. Make sure that is stashed away. You should have that money. If you don't have it, don't become an entrepreneur. If you have to fight for everyday existence, then you can't concentrate on entrepreneurship. Number 2, whenever you decide to become an entrepreneur, everybody can't become at 19 years and 21 years. By the way, last year I was at Harvard, Boston, on some other program. I went to Harvard, and the guy told me that Bill Gates, contrary to what the world thinks is a dropout, is not a dropout. He's Dr. Bill Gates. I said, how? He came here to one of the convocations, gave $1 billion. And Harvard made him an honorary doctorate. So it also happens in Harvard. And now Mr. Zuckerberg also wants that now. So, these things happen anyhow. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not an entrepreneur from the virtual digital space. I'm not an entrepreneur from the artificial intelligence place. I actually went because in Hindustan Lever, after I did my financial qualifications, they posted me as head of an aquaculture farm. Now this is strange. These things happen in big corporations. So I was in aquaculture for 7-8 years, and absolutely I forgot all my studies. I'm now more of a microbiologist. I'm more of a pisciculturist. I do not know how many people can get this chance in their lives. So I tell people it doesn't matter what you studied, where you came from. And always, even if you have cash, if you don't have an idea, banks won't back you, sir, in this country also. Again, as people have already mentioned, I approached several venture capital funds, and then later on found out there is a West Bengal venture capital fund set up by a leading bank, as somebody was telling me about listing in SME, Rupenda was telling me. Yeah. So then we found out there is a venture capital fund for Bengal, and there was 200 crores in it, and nobody has applied for it. You'll be surprised to hear only 30 crores has been invested in Bengal. LIC was one of the promoter, and 170 crores went back. Nobody knows about it. It's a fund set up by SIDBI. Of course, we did get substantial money from them. The fund is just closed. After 3 years, it was in existence for small and medium exchange industries. I can put you on. Yeah. So, and then, and you should be, and when you want to start an industry, you need to have a minimum amount of at least your own capital, 1 or 2 crores, and then you need venture capital, 7, 8, 10 crores, and then you need bank funding and etc., etc. So we went through all that. One more thing I'll tell you, because I had 20, 25 years corporate experience, as one of the speakers told me, that your idea should be saleable to a banker. And then he will start only believing you, because if you have had experience. So I had to train a lot of farmers, get them involved in aquaculture, as the social stories Mr. Mukherjee said. And finally, after 3 years, we found out that there is also a Ministry of Food Processing grant in the central government to which you can apply up to 10 crores, provided you had a net worth of 1.5 times. So that's where I decided to take in a partner. Collectively would come to a higher net worth, and eventually we got going. Now, I can only tell you one thing, a brick and mortar startup is very difficult. there are 20 to 30 licenses required in West Bengal. I think Khadims will also agree how difficult it is to say hospitals. 58, she says. Identifying the land should be clean, electricity connections, pollution board clearances, industrial licenses, fire licenses, in our case APMC Act license, export license. Nowadays we also have e-sealing, custom permissions, contract labor license. Now, this is very important. Then registration, of course now GST, tax, PAN, so many things, importing goods, capital goods license. So there's a lot of things to deal with. And I can tell you as an entrepreneur, if you do not have had a past experience, it's difficult to do all these things. And today, our company, we employ about 600 people. Again, as you, Mr. Mukherjee, we employ a lot of women and from the minority section. And we found out while doing that, we went to the West Bengal Labor Ministry and said we want 200 unemployed women whom we want to train. Give us a list. They gave us a list. We went there, we took the list, we phoned them and said, why don't you come for work? We'll teach you. Then we found out Skills India, which is a central government project, is giving money to train workers. See, there are a lot of things in this country. You come to learn one by one. Then we took money from Skills India and trained workers. And these workers today who did not want to work, they're all happily earning 12, and there's a Minimum Wages Act, so you earn money. So it has been a very interesting experience for me. I became an entrepreneur only 11 years ago. I'm approaching 60, but I have enjoyed every moment of it.
We have time for just a few questions, and I'd really encourage our younger members of the audience, the students, if you have a question.
My question is to Mr. Basu. You've been known to be, shall I say, outspoken with the political classes. You've gone viral on the internet as well, I'm sure you know. So my question to you is, the current political scenario in India is vulnerable to say the least. Do you believe that this might be beneficial to entrepreneurs, that there are opportunities there that are available for us? How do you see the politics of business and the business of politics interacting with each other?
Yes, I mean, I think it's clear that there's one party that is relatively pro-business and that generates stronger growth and low inflation. Certainly with the other party, you get high inflation for a start, and if you have high inflation, then interest rates go up, and consequently, eventually, growth will be lower. So, I think there's if you want a quick answer, that's my quick answer, and I can leave it to your imagination to guess which one I think you should support.
Yeah, if there is one party which sort of has business, and if you try to probe into that, they may just say that it's none of your business.
My name is Devarun Chakraborty, and I'm an MBA student, first year.
Okay, carry on.
So I think we all have arrived at one understanding that education is very much important in the case of entrepreneurship, and many institutions, they are actually providing all the entrepreneurial education. But how far do you think, sir, that the education at the primary level is important? Because as far as Bengal is concerned, at the national level, people are concerned with much more bigger things. Whereas in education, Bengal is still concerned about what should be the third language, whether it should be Bengali or...
Yeah, I think your question is very clear. It's a very primary question. So
yes, I think, one of the aspects that probably held Bengal back was the fact that primary education was shifted to Bangla. Now, in some ways, Bangla could have been a great advantage. In Bangladesh, where you have the whole country speaking that language, it makes sense to have Bangla as the language of instruction, and it has become a strength for Bangladesh. But if you're in a diverse country like India, then Bengalis are at a disadvantage, or people living in Bengal are at a disadvantage if Bengali is the medium of instruction at the primary level. Because then, when you go for the national level examinations and so on, you're at a disadvantage. And when you compete internationally as well, it's a disadvantage. So, it was the same mistake was made in Malaysia, interestingly. I mean, Malaysia shifted to Bahasa Malaysia, and the Malays of Malaysia are at a disadvantage relative to the minorities, the Chinese and Indians there, because they are educated in English. So, well, I mean, personally, I think it's a bit tragic that this was the decision that was taken. But we are a diverse country, and the advantage of using English as an international language is great. Now, I think it is perverse that in India, our higher judiciary is conducted only in English. Supreme Court and High Court arguments are conducted in English. This is bizarre. You know, at the time of independence, less than 1% of Indians spoke English. So you're depriving 99% of our people of justice, in effect. So, but we have many perversities in our country, and the perversities have to do with the colonial legacy. This building, this plot of land was owned by Thomas Babington Macaulay, who probably is responsible for many of the perversions of modern India. But it's us. We cannot blame it on Macaulay any longer. He's gone, long gone. So there are many other issues that we could begin to address. But I think one of the grand errors that the CPIM made early on was the decision on the language of instruction at primary school level. And then, of course, the attitude to business is the bigger problem. The attitude, and not just them. You know, long before CPIM came to power, they were causing trouble at Presidency College and elsewhere, the Naxalite movement. And Sir Biren was one of the early victims. And in fact, one entire generation of Bengali businessmen were destroyed. The interesting thing is, someone asked me, you know, the trader community is much better at aligning with whoever is there. You know, interestingly, G.D. Birla, by the way, had joined the violent nationalist movement for independence. But he also was friendly with the British. He was writing letters to Churchill. He was, of course, funding the Congress Party. So that flexibility, unfortunately, Sir Biren obviously didn't have. And many others. Many of the other Bengalis decided to fight the communists rather than join them. And so they were destroyed. So that is unfortunately. The history of what destroyed Bengal is a really sad story. But here, I think we have a much more hopeful story, and such wonderful examples of entrepreneurs represented today, I think have given you so many inspiring examples to follow. So it's a real pleasure to be here. And I hope the next question is for one of the entrepreneurs.
Sir, this is a question for Mr. Rao. I just wanted to ask you one thing. As far as entrepreneurship is concerned, most of the colleges in West Bengal, basically, they don't teach us how to be an entrepreneur. So there are foundations like Wadhwani Foundation who are doing workshops with these colleges. So I just wanted to know how to encourage students to be an entrepreneur, because most of the people are nowadays very, like they don't want to take the risk because there is a scarcity of money as well, because people, obviously they are not all from business backgrounds. So
yeah, I think the question is very clear. You made your point, so let him respond now.
No, it's okay. The real issue here is that you have to stop blaming the system and turn it around. There is in IIM Calcutta, Rupen was talking about, a website. Were you aware of it before you came here? Well, now you are. Yes. So my point is, Wadhwani Foundation, you have to attend their workshops. It's entirely possible that in the mainstream curriculum, you know, we had a saying 100 years ago, what Bengal thinks today, rest of India thinks tomorrow. It's now about whatever India does, Bengal does about 5 or 10 years later. So it's entirely possible that entrepreneurship formal courses will come into business schools here a little after they've come elsewhere. But remember, not all entrepreneurship can be taught. A lot of it, especially risk and culture. In fact, there are Weberians who argue that it goes all the way back to child rearing.
we don't know enough. But there's different views of it. What you can learn, as I told you right there, the theory and the practice, the details, how to negotiate with a venture capitalist, how to have agreement among team members about exits and entries. Those are practical and theoretical stuff that you can learn in a seminar. You can go to IIM Calcutta to that website and learn, rather than expect the professors who are probably still teaching Finance 101 to teach it to you. That's the way I would resolve that problem. And remember, there's a whole 50% which is not taught. It's learned by you from experience. I mean, he's a chartered accountant who his company kind of irrationally dumped into a shrimp farm, and the rest is history. He learned it on the job, and so that's so. Please do not look at positioning things as problems. See, because you yourself are aware there is one body foundation. Find out more, get that done.
Actually, if you look at the experience of the person who started a company called TSMC in Taiwan, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company is the world's largest semiconductor foundry. And he started at Texas Instruments. He worked at Texas Instruments for many years. He was brought back to Taiwan to head the Industrial Training and Research Institute in Taiwan. And then he started the company. So he had years of experience behind him. He found that there was a niche to be filled, and he filled it dramatically. So, it's not as if you have to have a spark when you're in college immediately. It might still be a good idea to join and learn a trade, as you saw in many of the examples. Learn a trade, and then while you're doing that, you'll find that there might be an opportunity that arises along the way. There's another, in Taiwan, there's lots. Taiwan is a really entrepreneurial country. Asus Tech. Asus Tech is, many of you might use an Asus computer. Asus Tech was founded by 3 people who were senior technical people in Acer. So they learned the trade, they learned how to make computers in Acer, and then now Asus Tech is the world's biggest motherboard manufacturer. It makes motherboards for computers, #1 in the world, and also makes PCs and laptops. So you learn the trade along the way and then find a way to become a competitor.
Hello everyone, my name is Manish Dhar. I am from ISWM, and my question is to Joydeep Mukherjee. Sir, we 4 are from Sports Management Department. Okay, so as you know, in Bengal, we can be doctors, lawyers, teachers, and businessmen, even an entrepreneur. But when it comes to sports, it's difficult. It's really difficult, and let alone a sports manager. So, for example, he wants to be a commentator. He wants to work on the grassroots level of our football management. He wants to work for AIFF. He wants to have his own class 1 state level fitness center. I myself wants to work for English Premier League as a football manager. So me saying this, standing here, is everyone will just laugh it off. And in entrepreneurship, all of the entrepreneurs use the word dream. Okay, we use the word aim because we have a lot of backlash using the word dream because our families and relatives doesn't support that working the sports field will have a future for yourself. So we are taking a huge risk already. We have cornered. So what do you think people like us who want to be sports managers lies ahead for Indian sports, apart from cricket actually, which is...
See, I can't really comment on the difficulties of the sports specific segment because I don't know enough. Please sit down. I don't know enough about that. But I do know as an entrepreneur, it is not necessary or it is not important that you achieve a certain level of educational clarification or educational commitment before you start focusing on your dream. Now there is a discipline once you've decided that you have already the spark in you knowing this is what you want to do.
That is one big tick mark in your favor. Now comes the discipline part of it, is how do you go about it? You know where you want to reach. Now the question is, you are at your position right now. What is the roadmap for getting there? And it is incredibly hard work. It is intensely hard work. It's takes a lot of effort, but break that down to very specific targeted timelines and performance objectives that you need to meet. To get to that, where do you want to be? Be absolutely clear in your mind. Write down, what does that mean for you? When will you know you have received your dream? And what does that dream mean? What does it take to translate that dream from where you are right now? I'm happy to speak with you, take my card on a one-on-one basis, and guide you as to, I never knew that taking care of the elderly can be so rewarding, so as well as makes good business sense. I've been a global CFO all my life. I never realized doing high-tech IT work with girls from Mityaburus and ex-Naxalites could make sense. When the whole world told us, this doesn't make sense. And this is not a business you should be in. So let us sit down together. I'm glad you asked me this question, because I love young people who dream. That's what you're supposed to do. Not really old people like us starting to dream. I love the youth and your dreams. So let me talk one-on-one and support you. But be prepared for incredibly hard work. And the two things you must have as an entrepreneur: passion and resilience. You must drill yourself every day in the morning. Life will kick you down, but you'll stand up again and go for it. Have the passion to change the world and change your life.
Myself, Rajiv Chakravarti, and my question is to Mr. Basu. You know, he was... He's become very popular now, I guess.
You see,
so
that is a Provashi touch.
That's the network that Mr. Rao was
Yeah.
talking about.
What's
So my
your question?
question to him was, you were talking about declining of Bengal. You said in one of your slides that Kolkata and Dhaka were the two cities which didn't have any billion-dollar companies. So what for you, I mean, for Kolkata was one of the richest cities of the world, is it like the Darwin's theory of the struggle for the fittest, that they haven't struggled, they haven't adapted themselves and they've gone down? Or is it something else?
Well, cities and countries have ups and downs. You know, India was the world's biggest economy for most of human history, or recorded history. But by the time, by 1947, our share of world GDP was only 4.6%, down from 24.4% in 1700, and it declined to 3.1% by the time the Nehru family was done in 1990. So you have downs. So this is the greatest decline in relative share of GDP of any country that has survived. Some countries didn't survive. The Aztecs, the Incas have gone. So that is the worst case. You know, you can be Aztec, Inca, you're wiped out. Of the ones that survived, the greatest relative decline ever is this. So you have these things happening, and but it can be revived. So we owe it to P.V. Narasimha Rao. He revived our country from this precipitous decline. And similarly, Calcutta, sadly, to my mind, the simple reason why Calcutta and Bengal declined was Karl Marx. We fell so much in love with Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels that we owe, you know, that book, there should be a bonfire of copies of Das Kapital in this city, because an entire generation fell in love with that. Sadly, even I was a victim in college. So we all, I mean, an entire generation was bowled over by this nonsense. So now you can always reverse it. After all, China was a communist country. I say was. It is still ruled by a communist party, but actually it's ruled by a fascist party. It is classic state socialism that is of the, combined with extreme nationalism. It's a classic fascist party, the so-called Communist Party of China today, under Xi Jinping. So, but the point is that they have turned around and moved in the capitalist direction since 1978 and have transformed the country. Calcutta is still stuck in the mindset of the Marxist past. And that Marxist mindset needs to be obliterated and replaced with an entrepreneurial mindset. And we are the small minority, hopefully, that can help to revive the entrepreneurial mindset and begin the revival of Calcutta and Bengal.
So the fault lies with Marxda, as they say, yeah? And full marks to you for that. Right.
Sir, in the midst of your speech, you said that people from California and all are looking for investment here. So what type of industry or what they are looking for?
Yes, of course. I mean, all these industries, I would say that, make Khadim an export-oriented company is one immediate suggestion I would have, because footwear and aquaculture are two obvious areas where we should be globally competitive. Why not? But
because the camera is not able to catch you.
The question, really it should be the other way around. What do you want? And then you have to figure out, using the Praboshi network, who you can reach out to. There are Bengalis in finance, in IT, in healthcare, in everything in the world. And they're very talented people. And usually they have pretty fat checkbooks. So, and we in India are usually looking for fairly small amounts of money compared to what they are capable of investing. So the question is the other way around. What do you want? And then with the internet today, you can track and you can actually figure out who is there, where, and that person can help you in whichever industry. Because I think complete range, be it hospitality, I think Chatterjee was quite foolish to invest in a refinery, but he has. In fact, I told him he's making a mistake in fairness. But, people do things. And it's a completely patriotic gesture of putting money in the wrong place, but he's done it. So you can appeal to Praboshi patriotism. Huh? Discounted cash flow, net present value, think of all those
all
things.
Right.
Anyway, but you can find. It's not that there's somebody sitting in San Francisco saying, I want to invest somewhere. It's the other way around. You go and sell them.
Thank you. I have to sincerely and officially thank not just our panelists, who've been absolutely wonderful. Maybe have a loud round of applause for all our panelists this morning.
Yes.
And applause for yourself for being such a wonderful audience. We were very interested and also quite nervous about putting together two generations of Indians face to face in a hall. We didn't want it to be a Chamber of Commerce program. We wanted interaction. Thank you for rising to the occasion. Thank you for your wonderful questions and your attention right through a rather long morning.